Welcome, Bears Nation. My name is Aldo Gandia. That handsome gentleman beside me is Danny Shimon. Danny, how are you?
I am doing great, Aldo. Great to be back, breaking down some tape and then talking Bears again with you.
I'm glad the family as well. I know you had a little bit of a COVID scare there with the kids a little bit ill, but you've escaped that, right?
Yeah. We went through a little COVID scare. Both my kids ended up getting it, but luckily, thank God, they're very mild symptoms and they're both good now.
And they're both vaccinated?
No, that my kids aren't vaccinated yet. No.
Okay,
That's
because
something
I know
I got
they've
to
started
get
that
onto.
whole process. I haven't followed it very closely because I don't have kids that young, but I know they've started that process for some people. So,
Yep.
well, glad they're okay. I'm glad you're okay, and I'm really looking forward to this hour plus of football talk. Here's what we're going to do today. We want to look at Darnell Mooney. He has had an opportunity to make his case over the last two games as to whether he can be a number one wide receiver for the Chicago Bears once Allen Robinson departs, or is it going to be necessary to put some assets, particularly free agent money? I think that's the only way to assure you're getting a number one quality wide receiver. Is it going to be necessary for in the offseason for whoever the general manager is to acquire somebody to help with Darnell Mooney? After Danny shares some tape with us, his thoughts on that, then we're going to talk about building blocks for the future. Danny has identified a handful of players that he thinks are going to be guys that the Chicago Bears can count on for the future. And it's going to be quite startling when we get to one of the boards as to how many players are missing. So I'm anxious to get Danny's thoughts on that. Danny, thanks a lot for all the preparation that you do into the show. Are you ready to get going?
Yeah, I mean let's go on. Let's talk about Darnell Mooney here.
All right. Do you want to play tape first, or you got any starting observations for our fans on Mooney?
Well, I know the question here is can Darnell Mooney or is Darnell Mooney a number one receiver? Obviously, I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I think we both agree that at this point right now, I'm not comfortable calling him a number one receiver, a guy that the offense can run to or actually run through, I should say. But he's showing things that I do like. Now there are some things that we're going to touch here on tape that I need him to work on to get better at. Now, could he ever escalate, make himself into the category of a Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, DeAndre Hopkins, those guys that I consider number one, receivers. I'm not sure. I'm not there yet. Right. There are some positive signs that I can see him getting to a point where he is one of the, the better receivers in the league. But there's also some things, like I said earlier, that I need him to get better. I need him to get stronger at the catch point, meaning that I need him to be able to catch through contact. And we're going to play a clip here where that's an example of what I'm trying to talk about here. I need him to get a little bit, stronger, maybe 5-10 pounds of muscle. So when he is pressed or he's jammed at the line of scrimmage, right now he does a good job of being able to win at the line of scrimmage with his quickness, with his speed. But once you get a little bit up in the years, you're gonna have to start working with some muscle, be able to kind of use your hands to be able to break free at the line of scrimmage of a corner like say a Jalen Ramsey or one of these top tier cornerbacks are trying to press you and jam you off the line of scrimmage. To kind of slow your release and also not allow you to get into your route pattern as quick as you want to. So those are going to be the maturation steps that we're going to see. We need to see Darnell Mooney take in the next couple of seasons. So, so far the first couple of, first season last year he was kind of like a surprise, came out of nowhere, a 5th round pick. This year he was counted to be a number 2 behind Allen Robinson. Been kind of thrust into the spotlight with Robinson's injuries and his lack of production. Up until these last couple of weeks, really, he's really hasn't had that, the big games. He's got a big game against Detroit, Justin Fields' first start. And other than that, he's been kind of non-descriptive in terms of, making those big plays or having those consistently big games. So it's something that the last couple of weeks have been good. Actually, this past game against Detroit, there's, he made a ton of plays, big game, but we're going to show you some tape here where there was opportunities that he could have made even bigger plays as well in the game as well too. So,
yeah. And I'm going to probably push back a little bit. And I agree with 99% of what you said, but I do think that there are some of the reasons perhaps that he has not had big games in the first half of the season or has seen that productivity has been more because of what's going on around him. I agree with you that, You've pointed out all these things to me over the course of the season, and I see that in Mooney and that he's got to improve here and there and so forth. But at the same time, there's so many other guys. I mean, even Justin Fields, he could be playing at a higher level right now if he had more weapons around him. So, but you make some really good points, and I'm anxious to get your evaluation on these on this tape. You want to take a look at it now?
Yeah, let's go ahead and run it.
All right. This first play is that first series, and it's an incomplete pass on 3rd and 8.
Yeah, the one thing here, and this is what I'm talking about here in terms of being able to catch through through contact, right? He does a solid job of getting off the line of scrimmage. Gives Dalton a clear window there to throw the ball to him. Actually, if Dalton throws the ball a little bit more towards the boundary there to the out of bounds, that could be an easy catch there for Mooney. Mooney had to kind of slow down his route there to kind of catch up to that football, but. The corner, as you see on our next replay here, the corner does a good job of getting his hands in there and knocking that ball away. And this year we've seen a couple of times here where Mooney has had troubles, corralling that football, catching it through contact. And this is where I want him to get stronger at the point of the catch point and be able to kind of fight through these attempts here by the cornerbacks to rake their arms through and get that ball out of her. Just hold on to that ball, make that completion. And this is going to be something that I'm going to see him try and get, progress through his career. This is where some of that added strength could also come into effect here, be a little bit stronger, be able to fight off some of those attempts to get that ball out of his hands. But yeah, so this is something here. Well, one thing that also I've noticed this year with Mooney is in 83 targets this season, he's had 5 drops. And
now, where did you get that number from?
That's from Pro Football Reference.
Okay. Interesting, because and I know we all hate Pro Football Focus, and I really hate them. For the first time ever, I paid for the subscription to do it throughout the season. As soon as the season's over, and I'm even thinking about doing it tomorrow, is canceling it because they're unreliable. They've got him down for only 2 drops. Now, they do go through this explanation as to how they evaluate a drop.
Right.
This last play that we saw is not considered a drop because the defender disrupted the
Correct.
pass play. And I can't really blame that because
Right.
what you see is the defender hits his hand right there.
Right.
And so that's why the ball was not a reception, and that's why it's not a drop. But please go ahead.
Yeah, so that I agree with, because that's just a great play by a defender. But there are receivers, if you see, the Devontae Adams, the other guys that they go ahead and they can make these catches through contact. You can see, defenders trying to rake their arms in there and knock the ball out, but they got the strong grip to be able to go ahead and get that ball, control it, and be able to, possess the football and get that first down or make the completion. But yeah, Pro Football Reference had him down for 5 drops so far through 83 targets last year. Just to kind of compare, last year as a rookie, he had 98 targets with only 1 drop. So,
wow.
I've already seen some balls kind of bounce off his fingertips and kind of, get that tip ball drill that goes up in the air. And next thing you know, defender's picking it off and running the way with it. So, that's where I want to see him kind of clean that up as he progresses, throughout his career.
And as Mule says here, do you think this is just primarily about adding some weight and muscle in the offseason?
Well, that's where I want him to get a little bit stronger. Just first of all, is at the line of scrimmage. So when a corner comes up to trying to press him and jam him, he has the ability to go ahead and fight him off and get into his route. That's one area. The other area is something like here at the catch point, right? He's not going to be a guy that's going to be a go up and get a type of 50-50 jump ball kind of guy like an Allen Robinson right now. But he's a guy that uses his ability, his quickness, his speed to be able to get in and out of his cuts, in and out of his routes, stem quick at the top of his route and be able to get open. We'll see some routes here where he's getting open. He's creating windows, not necessarily huge gaping windows, but there's a clear path there for the quarterback to get that ball into him. And I like the way he's doing it this year so far. Now that's one of the goals he came into this year was working on his route running, being able to create some more separation from the defender. And we haven't seen that consistently throughout the season. There are times where the defender looks like he's glued on him and he's not able to create separation, even with that speed and his acceleration ability. But again, we talked about some of the circumstances around him. Could that be some part of the offense? Could it be, there's nobody else, on the opposite side that's drawing attention. So, that could be a lot of things that are playing into factor, but just for him specifically, some added muscle, some good muscle, about 5 to 10 pounds, just to get him stronger at the line of scrimmage. The other thing is, and although you might agree with this, what I consider a number one receiver he's got a block downfield. And there's a lot of times we've seen Darnell Mooney not be able to hold his man or his block or sustain his block. And some say that's not important. To me, that's very important, especially if you're going to be a team that's going to utilize the run game.
Right.
You got to maintain those blocks. There's a lot of times they bring him inside, close to the line of scrimmage and have him try to chip or at a defensive end or defender. And there's one time I remember that very clearly versus the Rams. I believe it was Jalen Ramsey who actually just blew through his block attempt and was able to get back into the backfield and affect the play negatively for the Bears. So that's another area where he's going to have to improve on is get stronger. And that also, his blocking should improve, hopefully, when he gets 5 or 10 pounds of good muscle.
It is, I don't know if it's good or bad, especially in today's football, but the top Bears wide receivers throughout their history have been really good blockers. and that's what probably has made them so much interested by the Chicago Bears, because the run game has always been their primary focus for decades. That's what the Bears.
I'm sure you remember Dennis McKinnon back in the 80s.
Oh, of course. Well,
one of the best blocking receivers I've ever seen.
I got a photograph of me and Dennis right there, and you're absolutely right. Outstanding blocker. He did it with gusto. He loved to knock people on his ass. When I worked with him, those were his words exactly. I love to get on a linebacker or defensive back and just knock him on his ass, and he was good at it.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to our next play that you have for us, and this is this 11-yard. Oops. What did I do there? 11-yard completion that Mooney had in the second series of the game. Take it away.
So this is the one where we have he has one-on-one coverage here, and look at the quickness here at the line of scrimmage. He wins with his speed and quickness. There's a nice head and shoulder fake there, outside jab step, gets that corner, opening up his hips, leaning towards the outside, and when he just cuts inside, gets that inside leverage, gives the quarterback a nice clean a target to throw at. The ball is a little bit high there, does a nice job of extending away from his frame, bringing that ball in and making a catch. So this is what I'm talking about in terms of is able to win at the line of scrimmage currently with his ability, his quickness and his speed to get off that snap. Now, once that ever slows down, if he ever does slow down, he's going to have to be able to eventually fight off of those press with physicality. And that's what I was talking about. I keep referring back to some of that added strength. But right now he does a great job of getting off of there with quickness and speed. Now, again, the Lions don't have the premier corners. They don't have a Jalen Ramsey. They don't have, the top-notch cornerbacks there that can kind of, go ahead and lock them down, if you will, or get physical with them at the line of scrimmage. So that's what I'm going to keep an eye on is kind of moving on here. When we get to the Vikings with Patrick Peterson, he's not the same kind of corner as he was before, but he's still a pretty good corner. We're going to see what the Cardinals do here in this next game coming up in terms of, are they going to come up and press him and jam him? One thing I did notice the Bears like to do is they like to line them up, especially in this game, line them up in a 3-by-1 formation with him usually in the slot or in the middle. That's to kind of get him away from a corner that's going to come down and press him and give him a free release. So I think that's a good job of kind of game planning and putting him in a position to succeed.
Excellent. We will move on the chain of plays here. What do we got? We've got this explosive play, and it happens in the third series. It's a 1st and 10 at the Bears 36, a 33-yard pass play. Take it away.
Yep. Again, once again, we're going to notice here he's in a 3-by-1 formation. He's the inside slot receiver. He's got no one, impeding his release off the line of scrimmage. I'm not sure if it looks like the safety is picking him up there, Tracy Walker. That's a mismatch all day right there with a safety trying to cover Darnell Mooney one-on-one. Does a nice job of going ahead and just kind of getting that inside leverage and then breaking that route to the inside. Obviously, Dalton had him as his top target there and just throws a nice pass there, kind of leads him away from the defender, and it makes a nice catch and kind of gets 6, 7, 8 yards up the field for some more yak yards after the catch.
Yeah. And by the way, pass blocking was excellent on these clips that were.
Well, that's the thing. It's because we were talking about this game in terms of the goods and the bads, and I'm like, well, the pass blocking was good, but yeah, they're going up against the Detroit Lions, which is like the worst pass rush in the NFL. I was like, this was a game that you'll take a victory because victories in the NFL are hard to come by. There's only 17 opportunities to get victories, and you'll take it and to stop the big long losing streak. But I just felt like it was just it was like you barely are able to beat the worst team in football in the Lions on a last-second field goal. Andy Dalton throw for 300 yards, but those are like empty stats to me. Just like the empty calories we had Thursday night at Thanksgiving. These are empty stats. It was like 300 yards, but he missed a lot of throws, a lot of opportunities. He threw a red zone interception and almost threw a second red zone interception. It was just like okay, yeah, they won. Okay, offensive line played good, but they're playing against the Detroit Lions. So but there are a couple of bright spots, and we'll get to that later on in the show on that offensive line I want to talk about.
Great. Then after that 33-yard pass play, Mooney follows it up with a 52-yard pass play on a 1st and 10, and this is the 4th series of the game.
Yeah. Once again, look at the formation, guys. 3-by-1. He's lined up in the middle there. They like to line up next to either tight end or in the slot or in the middle between a tight end and receiver. Again, free release, gets upfield. It looks like the Lions were kind of blanketing, playing some 2-man there with the safety over the top, but I'm not sure what the safety was looking at because he got confused. He ended up kind of biting onto the outside and then allowing Mooney to go ahead and get upfield. So that's for me, that's at least a defensive breakdown there by the safety. And then Mooney obviously using that speed, the acceleration to be able to go ahead and pull away from the defender. Nice throw by Dalton there, hitting him in stride, and that's a big play. And that's what Mooney gives you. He gives you that ability to get downfield, to give you some of those big plays, and that's what you want to see, or at least I want to see coming into the season on a more consistent basis. So, we've been seeing his 2 best games this year. I think he's got 300 100-yard games. Correct me if I'm wrong, Aldo. He's got 3 100-yard receiving games, and 2 of them have been against the Lions. So, and then for the 49ers, it was one big screenplay. I'm sorry, versus the Ravens, it was one big screenplay that he just kind of caught behind the line of scrimmage and broke a couple tackles and then ended up going 60 yards for a touchdown. That was at a majority of his yardage versus the Ravens. So, he gives you that explosiveness that you get excited about, and I just want to see it on a more consistent basis.
What's Mule saying there? Yeah, I did spike Mike Norris coffee this morning. We'll talk about that later. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And he's been targeted frequently. So, I forgot what I was going to say because Mule distracted me. But let's go to the next play on our highlight reel here. And this is a missed opportunity by primarily Andy Dalton throwing his pick because he had Mooney one-on-one coverage in the end zone. Take it away.
Right. Once again, he's lined up in that 3-by-1 formation, and again, it's a great job of getting him off the line of scrimmage without anybody impeding his progress. He gets upfield, and then again, safety looks like it's picking him up, which that's always a mismatch to me. I'm not sure why that wasn't a Dalton's first read, but look right there. Yep. He's got him wide open. If he hits him in stride, that's probably an easy touchdown or at least a big play, but Dalton ends up going to the guy that's got double coverage in the red zone and throws an interception. So, so that's what I'm saying. Like you make some nice throws and you have 300 yards, but then you make plays like that kind of like, all right, it is Andy Dalton after all.
That is a play that Justin Fields probably would have saw his man Darnell because they have such good rapport and in Justin Fields' eyes, I don't want to speak for him, but he probably looks at Darnell Mooney as his number 1 wide receiver. I mean, that he's targeted him more than anybody else. Usually you have rookie quarterbacks who target tight ends or running backs the most in their first few games in the league, but Fields and Mooney, boy, boom, boom, boom from the get-go.
And Fields has talked about it, like that Mooney was a guy that stayed with him after practice and ran some routes and was able to catch some balls with them and all that stuff. So they have that rapport going there. And the one thing with Andy Dalton is, and I noticed in this game, is there's a lot of one read or predetermined throws there. There's just like, and you think, all right, before we were thinking, all right, maybe it's Justin Fields, just a rookie, still, getting his feet wet and trying to learn how to read defenses. And he was making a lot of predetermined, pre-snap reads. And now with Dalton doing it, a veteran of multi-seasons in the NFL, and I'm trying to think, is this incorporated in the offense? Is this one of the reasons why this offense is broken? Is that offense says, all right, if you get this matchup with this guy, he's your primary guy, throw the ball to him right away. Not sure. I couldn't answer that question.
Yeah, those things are hard to read. And another possibility could be because Dalton didn't have any practice and really hasn't had practice with the number 1 since the second week of the season. So that could be a factor of many things, but yeah, great point you bring up here. Now let's go on to the next one. This is the 9th series of the game. It's a 2nd and 10 and a 16-yard completion. The play started at the Bears 19.
Right, and this is where you're going to see him here lined up one-on-one versus press coverage. Again, nice ability to get to win at the line of scrimmage, be able to beat his corner, open his corner's hips up, already the corner's in a trail technique. fake and trying to, catch him from behind. Mooney, again, does a nice job of using that acceleration, the burst to be able to get upfield, runs a nice hitch route there, comes back to the quarterback a little bit, gives Dalton a nice target, and an easy completion for about 16 yards or so. So again, winning at the line of scrimmage with a press corner by using his agility and quickness and speed. So if you can do that against guys like Jalen Ramsey and all the other guys, now we're talking about a guy potentially who could be your number one receiver.
All right. Next play is a missed opportunity.
Yeah, this one is, this is something that really just, if you watch this play and you're like, how could this happen to a veteran quarterback? But again, when with their 3-by-1 formation, when he's in the slot, nice job of getting upfield quickly, getting the safety to kind of, get a little flustered there. He plants his feet, gets flat-footed, and when he's got the outside leverage, breaks it out to the corner of the end zone. Would have been a nice, easy touchdown throw. But that right there is a play where it looks like Dalton predetermined pre-snap. If the slant to Bird is open, he was going to throw it to Bird, and it was open. He threw it to him, a minimal gain. I think they might have got the first down there, I believe so. But still, he could have had a touchdown there. It really put the game away instead of having to wait to on a last-second field goal.
Yep. Mule says Mooney is a 6 to 8 touchdown guy a year if he's healthy and the team and offensive line is correct. What do you think about what he says there?
I could see 6 to 8 touchdowns a season. Yeah. Again, he gives you he's got 4 this year, I believe it is. I don't have the stats here in front of me right now. Actually,
I should have them. I'll check it out while you continue.
Yeah, so he's a guy I can see him doing that. The only thing is can he be the focal point of your offense? Can he be a guy that can work with your quarterback to be the guy that draws the double coverage, right? Is he a guy to be able to, can just one guy shut him down? Can you just put a corner on him and just shut him down without having to worry about bringing safety over the top or anything like that? So that's the question that I have about Darnell Mooney. And again, some of the other ones we talked about earlier in terms of being able to more physical at the catch point, so on and so forth. So that's where you prove if you're a number one receiver, right? You go into games against the Arizona Cardinals coming up. You look at DeAndre Hopkins if he's out there playing, Minnesota Vikings with Justin Jefferson, a young kid on his second season, but you can see that type of potential, the number one receiver type potential. Adam Thielen across from him has the same kind of potential to be able to win one-on-one battles, also win when he's double covered. So, Devontae Adams in Green Bay, that's a guy that, that he's the focal point of that offense. He's the main guy that Aaron Rodgers likes to look at and throw to, but he's always able to get himself, open and get that ball, whether he's got a corner on his back, contesting the catch, he comes down with those contested balls, or if he's just, wide open running by a cornerback. So, those are some of the progressions that Darnell Mooney needs to take in the next couple of seasons. Now, his size and his overall weight could be a factor there. You typically don't see, guys that are about 5'11", 5'10", 5'11", being number one receivers, especially nowadays. You always see more of the 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" guys. So, that's something that you have to keep in mind as well. See if he could go ahead and maintain good health and just, continue to be able to, like I said, win at the line of scrimmage and win downfield.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough how important this evaluation of Darnell Mooney is, because if you feel like he is a quality tier 2 wide receiver, somebody who is invaluable to the team, but more so as the second wide receiver as opposed to the first wide receiver, is going to determine the level of investment the Bears' next general manager, because Ryan Pace won't be here anymore, next general manager is going to put into finding a successor for Allen Robinson. And again, I'm assuming that this contract with A-Rob is not going to happen. And based on the news that's been filtering out to the media over the last week or so, it just doesn't look like the Bears and Robinson are going to be married next season. So the level of investment, and let me quickly just put up on the screen here some of the wide receivers out here. So Danny, at any point, stop me here, because it looks like, all right, A-Rob is definitely out. Godwin and Adams, no way the Bears are going to be able to afford that, any of those two guys, right?
Yeah, I don't think. First of all, I don't think Devontae Adams is going anywhere. I think they're gonna try and keep him in Green Bay. And Godwin is a guy that to me is a talented, big body receiver. He'd be a nice compliment here. I think him and a combination of him, Mooney, would be nice. But I just think that he's going to be someone that's going to be highly priced, and I just don't think the Bears right now could go ahead and invest big time money into the veteran receiver right now. But what I would, suggest you do is, and I think, you and I are kind of on the same wavelength here in terms of a compliment, but I don't necessarily think you have to go and get a number one receiver. What I think is Mooney is if he's not a 1A, he's a very high quality 2, right? With the potential to get better. So if you will get a guy that can give you some size on the outside to replace Allen Robinson, for example, I'm looking at the list here, and not necessarily just because he's right there on the list, but like a guy like a Juju Smith-Schuster, a guy that can get some of those, more of a possession type of receiver, a guy that can get you, 8-10 yards a catch, a guy could catch through contact and all that stuff. A bigger body receiver that's not going to break the bank on you. I think that'll be a nice compliment. And now you fill around them. Now you bring in some more guys around them. Like Mike Williams would be a nice guy from the Chargers. Big body, big play receiver. A guy gets downfield, can win those, contested jump ball situations. Things that Mooney cannot win. That'd be a nice compliment to Mooney. When Mooney gives you more of that speed, that quickness element on one side, you bring in a big guy like say for example there, Mike Williams. That'll be a nice compliment. So you don't necessarily have to go get a Chris Godwin, in my opinion, a Chris Godwin or one of the bigger price free agents. Plus, then what you do, you bring one of these nice mid-tier free agent receivers to play opposite Mooney. You go get a receiver from the draft. That's going to be a top priority in terms of a draft need coming into this draft is another receiver. Now you start building around them, right? You put some more speed on offense, and you don't necessarily have to have the big name, big play guy like a Devontae Adams. You could kind of fill around there with Justin Fields, and then also now the running game that you're going to have with Montgomery and Khalil Herbert.
Mule and I are on the same wavelength today. Remind us again who Keelan Cole is. Did we see him down at the Senior Bowl?
Keelan Cole is a veteran receiver. He was with the Jacksonville Jaguars, but I believe now he has moved on to a different team, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he is with the Jets.
These are the Jets now. Okay, yeah, he's a receiver that was with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I believe is undrafted free agent, and just a guy that's now moved on to the Jets. But I'm not. He's not some guy that I'm going to bring in here as okay. He's maybe like a third or fourth receiver at best here. Not a guy that can bring in as a quality number 2 to kind of complement.
What about
Darnell Mooney there?
Christian Kirk.
Christian Kirk is an interesting guy. We'll see him play the Sunday versus the Bears, and he's more of a quicker, shiftier, slot receiver for me. He's got some nice bulk to him for a smaller receiver, but he's a guy that I think will be a nice number 3, not more so than the number 2. I don't think he's a number 2 yet.
Right. Now, DJ Shark is a guy that's very, very intriguing, but he may not be that perfect complement that you've been talking about.
He's more, I think he's more of a Darnell Mooney type, right? He's a guy that's got that deep speed downfield, wins with quickness, not a guy that's going to be able to win those, the jump ball situations, and a guy give you a nice physical possession receiver. So I think the combination they have right now with once Allen Robinson is healthy and playing well, I think that'll be a nice combination of Robinson and Mooney. But we know what the business of football is, and Robinson's going to look to cash in probably, and he may not be here. But a guy like Mike Williams from the Chargers is a guy that would be, I think, a very nice compliment to Darnell Mooney.
Great. Well, maybe when the season is over, we can pull some Mike Williams tape, and you can do a review of him because he would be a very, very intriguing candidate.
Another guy I just saw up there that kind of just scrolled real quick. A young guy, Michael Gallup from the Dallas Cowboys, is a guy that also is got some good speed. Not a really big guy, but as a guy that is physical at the catch point, can go up and make those contested catches, with a defender all over him. And there was bare truth right there, just put out there. Yeah. So Michael Gallup is a guy as well that I would not mind, bringing in here and having him complement Darnell Mooney on the other side. So Michael Gallup and Michael Williams are 2 guys to keep an eye on.
Did you know that Laz has a really good sense of humor? He suggested Kevin White. Way to go.
Yeah, he's available. Yeah, he's available actually, I think, right now, maybe, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He was just recently dropped. So I think that's where Laz has got that joke from. All right. Before we get off of Darnell Mooney, one of the things that you said in your evaluation when we were scrolling down that wide receiver list is that is the traditional way is you get your speedster guy. The speedster usually plays what? The flanker or the split end position?
Well, nowadays they're line up all over the place. Now they can line up in slot. We saw them line up in slot. We saw them outside, all over the place. So really right now with the NFL, it's so open in terms of just getting points, getting downfield, making big plays. you can see it line up at the Z, at the Y,
right.
at the X sometimes. So it just, and that's why the Bears, remember, there was an issue with some of the younger receivers, is that they weren't learning all of the position. I think Anthony Miller was one of them.
Yeah.
The other, the kid from Georgia, the 4th round pick, Riley Ridley, was also having issues learning all the positions. And I think that was because the Bears want them to be able to play any of those positions, right? So I think that's the thing, is like, I'm assuming there's going to be a new coaching staff here next year. So I'll see what kind of offense they bring in. But I can definitely see Mooney being utilized on the outside or inside on the slot. Like we saw here on the slot, I like the way they utilize him in Detroit because they got him free releases. The safety wasn't going to come down there and jam him inside. And I think that was a nice way to be able to utilize him off the line of scrimmage.
Okay. So the reason I brought this up is because what if the Bears cannot sign that big body wide receiver who might be a perfect complement to Mooney? Isn't it a little bit more acceptable nowadays to have speedy wide receivers and not worry, because you can count on the tight end to get you those big catches that big body receivers do?
All right. Look at the Chiefs, for example. And I know we don't want to keep going back to the Chiefs because this system's probably going to be gone, by next season. But you look at the Chiefs, they have fast, quick receivers. They don't have a big guy on the outside. Their number one receiver really is their tight end, Travis Kelce.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a talent like Travis Kelce, that's something different, right? But and again, you don't necessarily need that traditional big 6'3", 6'2" guy. It's nice to have a guy that you can just kind of throw up there and go up to get the play. But if you have tight ends like Cole Kmet, Jesse James, or if you go bring in another big body tight end in the draft or in free agency, now you have two guys that you can probably throw the ball up to in the red zone area. But if you have speed and quickness, again, now you're gonna have to have a coach or offensive coordinator be able to scheme and get these guys open and put them in situations where they can utilize that speed and quickness. Not necessarily line up one-on-one against these cornerbacks and try and beat them off the line of scrimmage, necessarily just racing them down the field. So that's one thing when you have speed and quickness. You're gonna have to kind of get them in positions where they are schemed open, as opposed to big guys that can just go up there, and especially guys that can extend away from their frames and bring in those balls away from the if it's an errant throw or whatnot, they can the body control to be able to contour and be able to adjust to the football and bring those in. Guys with long arms, big frames are typically those big targets that quarterbacks like to just throw the ball up to and have them go up and make a play.
Right. One of the things that has become kind of an unplanned ritual for our Thursday show here at Bare Truth is that we always gush over Lazer's press conference. Well, today he didn't have that many great sound bites, but I did pick two that I think are relevant to what we're talking about tonight. The first one is, you mentioned scheme just now, and he was asked a really cool question about how do you go about making your plan for the upcoming opponent when you've got so many guys who are injured and they're questionable and you're not sure whether they're going to play or not. So I want to kind of interrupt the flow that we got going here and listen to Laser talk about how he handles the injury infestation that has hit the Chicago Bears.
On game day, immediately when a guy goes out, if there are some plays that were real specific to him, which often show up with either special plays or situational plays, and if no one else really repped it, and it's not maybe a training camp play, you might cross that off.
Literally with a marker or something?
Pencil. Because sometimes I come back in the game. I did have one this week. I crossed off in pencil, and then I erased it just so that my eyes wouldn't see it crossed off. I keep one pencil up there. And then usually the position coach will say, hey, we're good with everything except this. And then you just try to go. Now, there were maybe one or two calls where I knew guys were out, and so we had time where you could maybe flip the people by formation, as long as it's simple. If it's too complicated, then, hey, the replacement's just got to go if we really need that play. So in game, there's a little bit that you have to erase sometime, usually, but you try to keep as much of it going. If you get multiple guys down, then that becomes an issue. During the week, it's everything. Personnel is everything. And the hard ones, which we're dealing with, is some guys who are questionable. So we really want them to play and prepare, so we put some plays in that we know are specific to him. You don't want to overdo it if he doesn't play, but if he might play, well, shoot, let's get his best plays in. So that's the hardest one, I think, as coaches, is when you don't know yet if the guy's going to play.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. That's great detail. I mean, that just gives you a little more insight in terms of the offensive coordinator. And remember, this is all happening on the fly, guys, right? And I think the guy he was talking about in terms of a guy who left, came back, was Marquise Goodwin. He left the Detroit game for a little bit. I forgot what the injury was, but then he was able to come back in again. So, you have plays for a guy. Now Marquise Goodwin is a prime example. He's a guy, speed guy, right? He's not a guy that's going to win those 50-50 jump balls. He's not a guy you're going to really throw the ball to when it's contested. He's a guy that, go routes, certain type of routes. And if you have a play design where you like, the defensive coverage is gives him an opportunity to go one-on-one with his using his speed downfield, that's probably where he's going to call that play and make sure, Marquise Goodwin is your primary guy. So, guys like that, you scheme these guys open, you put them in positions to go ahead and succeed. We talked about with the Mooney plays here. A lot of those big plays, he was in a 3-by-1 formation, either in the slot or in the middle between a tight end and another receiver. And a lot of times they gave him some free releases and be able to get downfield, eat up that cushion on that secondary. And that one play where Dalton didn't look at him in the end zone, he got on that safety really quick. Safety got paranoid, got flat-footed in the end zone, and next thing, Mooney had outside leverage, got to the corner, was wide open. Of course, Dalton didn't see him, but that type of an example is where you could utilize Mooney's speed and quickness inside and be able to get onto those safeties and be able to make big plays downfield.
One of the other things in that soundbite, kind of buried in it, he made reference to the position coaches. So clearly,
let me start on that.
You know where I'm going with this.
Right.
So clearly, he is getting input from Mike Furry, not your favorite position coach in the world, is he?
No, and again, might be a nice guy, and I know he's Matt Nagy's friend, and he's a guy that's I wouldn't want to fight him. He's a big, swole guy, that's for sure. But it's just I don't see the progression from these receivers, especially these young receivers, getting better and better. For example, Mooney we're talking about this year. Last year as a rookie came in, had a good impact. We've expected him to take the next jump. We've seen bits and pieces of him doing it here. Now, is that the offense? Is that the quarterback situation? Is that all the above? Is that just he's not been coached up to get to the next level? Time will tell, right? But I just seen it with all the receivers, with Anthony Miller, with Riley Ridley. These guys are years 2 or 3, and they're still not knowing the plays. They're still not not able to play all three position receiver. Now, some of it falls on the player. I'm not saying the player has no fault here, but also you got to get coached up, right? If a player is not learning the offense, why is he not learning the offense? Is it just a flip player? And if that's the case, you get rid of the player at that time. You don't just hold on to the guy if he's refusing to learn your offense. Now, we saw Miller in Anthony Miller's case, and I've been a big proponent or big defender of Anthony Miller over the years. And I just said, we saw his ability to score 7 touchdowns as a rookie, right, in very limited access. Why didn't he get better? Why did he not? Is it just all Anthony Miller? No, he's currently, I think he's on a practice squad for a team. I'm not sure. So, but it might be Anthony Miller, right? You might not be able to blame Mike Fury for that one, but there's other receivers. Javon Wims didn't get better after his rookie year. Riley Ridley, a 4th-round pick out of Georgia, didn't do anything basically. So why are these guys not getting better or showing any progress?
Yeah, Miller is on the Steelers practice squad as a matter of fact. So when I heard that, it made me kind of, the problems with the offense are multitude. Yeah. And one of them is probably the assistant coaches, the position coaches probably are not providing quality input so that Bill Lazor and Matt Nagy can develop a very efficient game plan. And even during the game, there's all that give and take that happens with the coordinator and position coaches and so forth. The intel they're getting from the sideline, because Lazor and Desai are both up in the booth. So it worries me that Matt Nagy, the head coach of this team, it is not only doing a poor job of coaching up his players, but he's doing maybe even a worse job of coaching up his coaches. You've got to train the trainers, and you've got to. That really is the head coach's main job. Is you got to make sure your coordinators are doing that, and then the coordinators are got to be working with their position coaches to get everything right. And if it's wrong, it usually starts at the top.
And that's why assistant coaches, one of the big thing when you come in to interview for a position as a head coach, they want to know who are you going to bring in as assistant coaches. You're bringing NFL veterans. You can bring guys that don't have much experience in the NFL. You're going to bring college guys because they want to know how you're going to coach this team up, right? It all starts from the bottom and works its way up to the head coach. So if a coach has his coaches working the way he wants or teaching these players and getting these players prepared to play in his system or play for, to start or whatnot, they are his extension, right? He doesn't sit there, Matt Nagy doesn't sit there and talk to every single, receiver or every single quarterback or every single offensive lineman. His offensive line coaches, his receivers coaches, running backs coach, these are the guys that are going to preach to the running backs, to their group, what the head coach wants and what they need in this particular system. And that's where that coaching starts. Those guys coach these players up, and then Matt Nagy puts into, or you think Matt Nagy puts in a scheme or a system that goes and allows these players to go ahead and excel on the field on Sundays. But one thing you can just tell that this system is broken. A couple of things from this past week is we saw Matt Nagy calling all the plays, right? At least it looked like he was calling all the plays, unless you guys saw something different there. And so why is he calling the plays for Dalton and not calling the plays for Justin Fields? Why is there two different play callers there? All right. The other thing is they barely scored 16 points versus the worst defense in the NFL. Yep. If that doesn't tell you your offense is broken, I don't know what else is going to tell you your offense is broken.
Well, and I've been saying on a couple of the shows this week, any show that I show my ugly face on, that the two victories against the Lions were gifts on the part of the Lions. They're probably, if they would have been playing almost any other team in the National Football League, the 30 other teams that they could have played, they probably would have lost with their performance, even against maybe the Jets and maybe even against the Texans. The Lions gift wrapped even the game at Soldier Field. They were in the red zone multiple times. Right. On fourth down. They decided to go for it instead of taking points. Right. The Lions are really one of the worst teams I have seen in a long, long time.
I mean, just the funny little side bit, little laughter I had there on Thursday was the whole timeout after a timeout where they got docked 5 yards because they came out of a timeout, misaligned, wrong personnel on the field, and they call another timeout, and then they got penalized 5 yards, and that got the Bears from a 3rd and 9 to a 3rd and 4, I believe it was, and then that I think that was the next play to Bird for that first down that we just showed that Dalton threw. So that's a team that's got some issues, its own issues. We'll leave them for
that's their problem.
Yeah, exactly. So we got our own problems here to deal with. But I mean, just the fact that you have to score. It took you a last second field goal to beat the Lions. Now I know they get up for their Thanksgiving Day games and all that, but you saw that the talent was not there. They were missing their top pass rushers. Not that they were any good in pass rushing the quarterback anyway, but I mean they're just the alignment was off. That Jared Goff is not a very good quarterback. It was just horrible, and they took them a last second field goal to beat this team and barely score. The main thing is the Bears cannot score points. The Bears cannot score points, and they scored 16 points barely against the pitiful Lions. That tells me right there your offense is broken.
Right. All right. Let's get on to our next topic, which is to talk about. Danny wanted to identify the building blocks the Bears currently have, in his opinion, for the Chicago Bears moving forward. So let's start with the offense. It was interesting for the first time in a long time. If you were to have done this exercise, over the last 40 years, maybe, you would have had more players on the defense that were building blocks than the offense. But you've identified almost definitely twice as many offensive building blocks than defensive building blocks.
And then the one thing I wanted to point out is because we're all talking about change here, right? I think we're all agree here that 100% there's going to be a new coaching staff here next year. The one thing I'm not there yet, and I know a lot of people are, is that it's going to be a whole new GM and scouting staff and all that stuff. I'm not there yet. And so what I did was I went and I took a look and say, all right, where are the building blocks here for the Bears if they want to go ahead and say they keep Ryan Pace, right? And McCaskey sits down and Ted Phillips sits down and says, all right, what have you done? And these are some of the players that I identified that are under 30 years old that I think could be building blocks for the Bears to go ahead and move in the future with. Now, veterans that are going to be like Khalil Mack, Robert Quinn, those guys I left off of there because they're going to be on the team.
Rightly so.
I'm not saying, but they're not the build. They're guys that are already established. They're in their 30s. I'm thinking about young players that can build a core here.
Right.
Now you can add to it. You can add draft picks to this roster. You can add, I believe I saw somewhere where the Bears are projected to have roughly or almost $50 million in salary cap space.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a nice opportunity to go and bring in some free agents to help your new coaching staff, kind of rebuild on a fly, if you want. Maybe not even rebuild, maybe just retool and get back into a winning competitive team. Because I guess what I wanted to say was there is some talent here to work with. This is not a cupboard that is bare. This is not what Ryan Pace inherited from Phil Emery. This is a team that's got some talented players in it, especially guys that are under 30 years old.
All right. Well, we'll maybe debate some of that.
Well, I know you're on the fire, Ryan Pace.
Yes, I am. All right, here is the offense. 8 players Danny's identified. And again, these are not veteran players. These are guys that you want to see them playing here anywhere between 3 to 10 years down the line. And you start, of course, with Justin Fields. That's a no-brainer.
Right. And I guess the biggest position, or the most important position on the football field, the quarterback, I feel you have it covered here with Justin Fields. What you got to do now is just build around him and bring in a coach or an offensive play caller that's going to be able to utilize his strengths and allow him to go ahead and succeed. So I think that's a huge sign there. Justin Fields is only 22 years old. Hopefully he plays this week and get some more of that experience. And then we move to the backfield, right? With David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, I think you have a terrific 1-2 punch. I've been on this in training camp. I love the depth that the Bears had at running back. They can always go and bring in another veteran, like a Damian Williams, for example. They can always go and get a guy, as undrafted free agent or bring in a guy on a tryout and give him an opportunity to be a third running back. You also have Tariq Cohen here, assuming he comes back next year fully recovered, assuming that contract isn't going to be too cumbersome, they're going to go ahead and hold on to it. But a combination of Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, with a Tariq Cohen or a / veteran, I think the backfield is nicely set for the future. We talked about Darnell Mooney already in terms of the receiver position. Unfortunately, he's the only receiver we have right now that I've listed here as a building block.
Scary.
So that's going to be something that you're going to have to go ahead and build on. Now, there's a young guy in Daz Newsome, their 6th-round pick that has been on the practice squad this entire season. I have high hopes for him. I'm not saying he's going to come in and be a number 1 or number 2 receiver, but he's a guy that can contribute on offense. This guy can be a 3 or 4 possibly. So there's a guy to keep an eye on. Daz Newsome, the kid from North Carolina, is a guy I like to see next year develop, hopefully. But Darnell Mooney right now is the only young guy at the receiver position that I'm going to rely on for next season. Right now, we talked about Allen Robinson's contract situation. He's probably gone after this season. Bird and Marquise Goodwin on 1-year contracts, so they're probably going to be gone. So you're gonna see, if Ryan Pace is here, you're going to see him attack this receiver position the way he attacks positions when he needs to fill them. So he's going to go free agency. He's going to go through the draft. We talked about some of the free agent options. We looked at that list Aldo had earlier up there. But I think the draft is where you're going to be able to kind of, make some hay here at this position, bring in a nice young, receiver to kind of, work with Mooney and probably the veteran free agent you're going to bring in here as well and kind of build that room back up again. So offensive line, this has been a position that we've talked about the entire season. I know they had a pretty good game versus the Lions, but again, we're kind of throw that out there because the Lions have a horrible pass rush. But what I've seen so far of Larry Borom is very encouraging. Now, is he perfect? No. Is he a guy that's going to make a Pro Bowl this year? No. But he's a guy that's developing. He's a 5th-round pick, a big-bodied offensive lineman. They put him in a right tackle. I think he's done pretty well. I think he's had 3 starts, if I'm not mistaken. Only called for 1 penalty. So for me, a rookie, that is impressive. He's got to get better in his technique. He's got to get more stronger in his core, being a little bit more stout in terms of being able to build that bridge and hold off when guys are trying to get into his chest and bull rush him back. But those are all things he's going to work on. That's his technique. He's going to get better. But I think Larry Borom is a nice start there at right tackle. He might be your right tackle of the future. Cole Kmet has really come on these last couple of weeks, and I like seeing the progression this kid has made. He was built as a wide tight end, meaning a guy that can line up in line, also a guy you can kind of split out to as a slot receiver and be able to make some plays downfield. Is he a Travis Kelce? Is he a Rob Gronkowski in his prime? No, he's not. My comp for him coming out of college was a Kyle Rudolph, another Notre Dame tight end, a guy who played multiple seasons in the NFL, made multiple Pro Bowls. If you get type of a player in Cole Kmet, that's going to be a nice building block there at tight end. Again, you can always kind of bring in some more tight ends around him. The draft's going to be loaded with some nice tight ends this year. I don't know if you want to go there again, or if you want to bring in another veteran to kind of compete with him or play alongside him. That's something to keep an eye on at tight end. The offensive line, we talked about Bourne already. And for me, James Daniels, this is his 4th year. He's going to be a free agent after this season. They have him playing at right guard. He's had an okay season. He's gotten beaten a couple times. I think last year, I've said this multiple times on the show, last year at left guard, James Daniels was playing the best football of his career as a Bear until he got hurt. Tore that pec muscle, was out for the rest of the season. Now this year comes in, they're playing him at right guard. I think his best position, guys, is at center. He was a center at Iowa. I rated him as a center, as one of the better centers coming on that draft, and I think he needs to be put back at center. So I think that's a guy that you should probably re-sign or try and re-sign, and he should be your center of the future. Tevin Jenkins, obviously a 2nd-round pick. They brought him in as a possible left tackle. I didn't ever saw that. I didn't like that thought process of him moving at left tackle. I thought he was always going to be a right tackle or a guard. Now, if we go back to Borum and we say, Larry Borum is going to be a right tackle, I think Tevin Jenkins fits nicely in that right guard position there too. So that's a guy that, he hasn't had a snap yet in the NFL, so we can't judge him. We can't say he's a bust or anything like that. So obviously he's going to be a building block here moving forward. So I think the offensive line with those 3 guys, with James Daniels, Tevin Jenkins, Larry Borum, you got 3/5 already covered. If you keep Cody Whitehair, you have your left guard. So all you got to do now is go and get yourself a left tackle, whether that's a veteran free agent or it's going to probably be more likely a kid in the draft. That's where you got to shore up that position there. And I think then you have a core, a nice, little foundation developing there at offensive line.
And Danny, here's what concerns me about these building blocks. I'm not arguing with you on the selection of players. I think all of these guys are worthy of being on the list. Although, as you just mentioned, and people in the chat room have said, it's way too early to even know if Tevin Jenkins is going to be a player or a.
The only reason he's on it is because they invested a 2nd-round pick and they moved up to get him. So that's the reason I figured he's going to be here next year. He's going to be a guy that's going to be counted on heavily by the staff.
I get you. But my concern here is that you've got how many players from this past draft? You got Fields, you got Borum, you got Jenkins, and you got Herbert. And that's great that you got these guys, but they haven't proven anything. Unlike David Montgomery, he was from a draft three seasons ago. Darnell Mooney, this is his 2nd year. Cole Kmet, this is his 2nd year. So you've got those guys, but where are the rest of the guys? From 3 years ago, we're outside of James Daniels, who was an investment for 4 years ago. You don't have anybody from there. And I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying it's Ryan Pace's fault.
Right. Well, a couple of those guys are obviously Anthony Miller. We discussed already. Anthony Miller's already been cut. He's gone. And I'm trying to blank on that 1st-round pick that year. Oh, that was Roquan Smith. It was a 1st-round pick. Yeah. So he's on there. But yeah, so Riley Ridley, another receiver, was a 4th-round pick. He's gone. He's had some misses in the draft, and I'm telling you that we went that list. What was it, 2 weeks ago? We had the GMs that had a long running, that bad years. Yeah. And one of them is going to be coming this week with Steve Keim and the Cardinals, right? Yeah. It all kind of revolves around getting it right at the quarterback position. So I think Ryan Pace has gotten it right at the quarterback position. That's my opinion. It's obviously yet to be proven. It's going to be proven on the football field. But I think once you get that and you have a core here, now there are some players, like you said, there are some players that some draft picks that he's missed on. But they didn't have a 1st-round pick for 2 years because of the Khalil Mack trade. So that's something you have to also put in consideration there as well. So they were doing a lot of, Cody Whitehair is a draft pick, I believe, of Ryan Pace in his first draft, if I'm not mistaken there. So that could be another guy that's a draft pick of his as well. So, I know I know where you're going. I think you're saying that Ryan Pace has missed a lot more than he's hit on.
Yeah, I just feel like at this point in his 7 years with the general manager that this team now should have more building blocks than they do. The defensive board has half the players that you have on offense, so it's even more.
But the one thing I didn't put into consideration here is guys that guys that are 30 years old, guys he's acquired via trade, or guys he's acquired via free agency. So those are also got to be positives that he's got too.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right, and I guess part of what I'm saying is that I'm just the guy that I feel you need to build from the draft. Who was it? The Green Bay Packers, like 2-3 years after they won the Super Bowl in 2010, you looked at their roster and there was nobody that was a free agent. They had a couple of seasons like that. They were drafting so well. And in particular, they were doing so well with signing undrafted free agents that they had cornerbacks who were undrafted free agents starting and playing well and so forth. That was during the best period of the Aaron Rodgers area, that 2009, 2010, 11, 12 season. They were just hitting on draft picks. Ted Thompson did an effing great job. Ryan Pace, nowhere near it.
Right. I mean, you're not going to get arguing with me in terms of you build a team through the draft. And you know me, I love the draft, and I agree with you 110% on that. It's just that from what he's been working with, a lot of Ted Thompson, and a lot of guys that work the draft, and this is something that maybe Ryan Pace needs to get better at, is working that draft board, right? Trading down, getting multiple picks. You know, if you look at the Minnesota Vikings, every year, Rick Spielman, former Bear executive, has at least 12 picks in the draft. The more at bats, if you think of it as like a baseball game, right? The more at bats you have, the more chance of getting a hit. So that's why I love to see them kind of draft down and collect draft capital and just keep swinging at these players, and players will stick. But year after year, we'd see, because of some of the trades he'd make and trade up and lose draft capital, or make the Khalil Mack trade. He had like 5 picks in the whole draft class, 7 picks in the whole draft class. So, and then unfortunately, 2 or 3 or 4 of them didn't become NFL players, and they're gone. So those are considered misses for him as well. So again, I'm not going to sit there and be like, Ryan Pace deserves to get a contract extension and he deserves to be here. I'm on the fence there. I know you and some other people, some of the fans are saying clean house, get rid of him. I'm just trying to point out that there is some talent here that he has acquired, and these are just the younger guys. There are some veteran guys that are here as well that will be here next year that I didn't include on my list. So I just want to kind of give him a fair shot here, if you will.
Fair enough. And there's more than one correct way to build a team. So I think that's essentially what you're saying, and it's a true thing. Let's take a look at the defense. You've identified 4 building blocks. Again, everyone, these are guys who are really young in their careers. It's not, guys who have been here for a long time.
Right. So obviously Roquan Smith, I think, is an all-pro player this year right now. I think right now, look at his stats right now: 113 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, 3 pass defense, 1 interception, and the kid's only 24 years old. So this guy is going to go ahead and continue that tradition of great Bears middle linebackers. So I think he is a guy you need to re-sign. Do what you got to do to get him under contract. Jalen Johnson, a corner that had a little bit of a rough patch here, but I think it's kind of bounced back nicely the last couple of weeks. He's a guy, 2nd round pick. Talked about earlier, he's the guy that I see developing into a number 1, possible shutdown cornerback for you here. So that's a nice building block in your secondary. Travis Gibson, the defensive end. And he's a guy that it was a 5th round pick last year and really didn't get much exposure last year. This year, he's got some more playing time, and he's got a little bit stronger. He's a little bit more stout at the point of attack at the line of scrimmage. He already has, I believe, he's got 5 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, 3 sacks. So this is a guy I see continuing to develop and get better as a future building block. Another thing with Travis Gibson is if you bring in a new coaching staff and they switch from a 3-4 to a 4-3, he's a guy that can easily put his hand on the ground and be a 4-3 defensive end as well. So he gives you some of that position versatility or scheme versatility, if you will. So I think this guy got a nice building block there on the defensive line. Bilal Nichols, another kid that 5th round pick out of Delaware. I think he kind of flashed onto the screen as a rookie, really played well. Has been nipped here by some injuries, some nitpicky injuries here. Nothing that really has knocked him out per se, but has been nicked up here and there. So his production hasn't been that great, but he's definitely a guy that I see as a building block. Again, another guy that if you go to, say, a 4-3 system with a new defensive scheme, new defensive coordinator, he's a guy that I can see him shifting inside as a 3 technique defensive tackle, a guy that's got some quickness off the snap that can shoot that gap and get upfield and create some pressure in terms of rushing that quarterback from the inside position. So these are the 4 guys that I've identified as guys, again, under 30 years old that I see as potential building blocks that are brought in here by Ryan Pace.
Great stuff. Great analysis. And by the way, I forgot to play a soundbite regarding James Daniels, but I'll get back to that. Let's stay on the defense here. I want to play Sean Desai talking about Jalen Johnson and his confidence and that he's developing into a number one cornerback. And one of the reporters says that, yeah, it seems like this guy's confidence is really growing by the minute.
I do. I think he's earned that right. And I think he's taken on that responsibility. And everybody kind of grows as a vocal leader in different ways. And everybody's not a vocal leader, and that's okay. But yeah, I do think that he's feeling more comfortable. And I think, quite frankly, that comes from a few things. It comes from his preparation. Like you said, he knows the way he's preparing is helping him play at a certain level. And so when you have that preparation, then you have the output on game day, that's how you can feel a little bit more confident with your voice, and he's earned that right.
Yeah, and specifically what he was talking about there is that Jalen Johnson has taken a vocal role in the locker room. He's become a locker room leader. This guy is everything that you thought he was when the Bears drafted him, right?
Yep. Physical shutdown, potential shutdown corner guy that get into the receiver's face, has no problem, staying in phase downfield. Not as twitchy as some of the other corners that are around the league, but he's a guy that definitely does it with more force, a little more strength, and the guy is not scared to mix it up. Stick his nose in there and make a tackle. Is aggressive in terms of run defense. The one thing that I agree 100% with Sean Desai there is I think it was last week after that loss to the Ravens where Jalen Johnson came out and said, you know what, there's nothing a coach can tell me right now. There's no rah-rah speeches. There's nothing like that. We just need to man up and go and get a victory. That's it. And that's a guy, to me, showing leadership and saying, hey, you know what? No more of this bullshit. No more of this, we're going to sit here and we're going to say, oh, everything's great, but we're not playing well and all that stuff. Just go and just get a victory. That's it. That's all you need to do, and then that's him and Roquan Smith too. Roquan has also been vocal this year as well. So that's why I see these two guys as building blocks and as future leaders on this Bears defense going forward.
Yep. One of the things that when I look at tape of him is how impressive he is against the run. I mean, this guy, like you just said, he's not afraid to get his face in there and mix it up and be physical.
I think I'm more nervous for him because of those shoulder injuries he's had in the past. I don't want to be hurt, but yeah, he doesn't hold him back. He's aggressive, goes after the football or after the ball carrier and looks to wrap up and bring him down.
Yeah. Now let's talk about Roquan Smith, who you have already given us some detail on, but I want to ask you, what is the ceiling for this guy? I mean, we know now that he is probably top 2, maybe top 3, maybe top inside linebacker in the game of football, National Football League, but can he become one of those legendary superstar inside linebackers? What are your thoughts on Roquan?
I do. I think he can. I think he's top 3 right now. I think it's him, Fred Warner from the 49ers, and I think it's Bobby Wagner from the Seahawks. Those are the top, NFC inside linebackers. And, but one thing with Roquan is because he's so athletic, his ability to cover tight ends out of the backfield, running backs out of the backfield. He's a terrific delayed blitzer. His closing speed, his burst to be able to close in on the quarterback as a delayed blitzer is part of the reason why he has 3 sacks. You see that on those blitzes there. One thing it's going to be interesting. I'm going to monitor what happens here in terms of, Tony, you're right. His ceiling is all pro. That's his ceiling right there. Aldo, what I want to monitor with Roquan is if there's a coaching change and if they go to a 4-3 scheme, do you keep him inside as a middle linebacker or do you put him at the weak side linebacker? Think Lance Briggs, right? The weak side linebacker, a guy who's got the athletic ability to be able to roam. I call it see football, get football kind of, athletic ability, be able to just kind of roam, get those stops in the backfield, make those big plays like here we're seeing here with interception and running it back for the touchdown. Do you keep him inside if you change to a 4-3 or do you move him to a weak side linebacker position? That's one thing I want to see what the new coaching staff comes in and does. And again, if they stay with the 3-4, obviously he's an inside linebacker.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff there. Let me play the soundbite regarding James Daniels at right guard because Laser was asked about him playing at the right guard position and how he has adjusted to that position because he coming into the season he had not played right guard at all. Is that correct, Danny?
Correct. It was center and then left guard.
Right. Okay. So this is Laser. I'm talking about Daniels' evolution at the right guard position.
I think James has looked really good. There are some guys, when you flip right to left or left to right, don't make the transition. easily. Maybe because James has spent so much time at center, I don't know if that affects it, or maybe he's just a guy that can do it. But I think he's only gotten better. I think it's a real testament to James how well replacement guys at right tackle have played, because you can't downplay how much he does for them, and talking and communicating and his experience, and not only just on the field, but even in the meeting room. Hey, this is how we'll handle that. This is the call I'll make. You know, so I think the way we've been playing with replacement guys at right tackle also is a credit to James.
That is a great point, right?
That's something that we just kind of look it over. We don't kind of dwell on it, but that is a key point there, because those young right tackles, they rely on that veteran right guard next to them, and he does a good job of being able to help them if they need help. We talked about a couple weeks ago with Larry Borum, does a nice job being able to kind of pass his guy that's stunting, pass him off to Daniels, because him and Daniels have that communication going where he says, all right, you take him, I'm taking the guy who's looping out to the outside. So we've seen that already with Borum, and just 3 or 4 starts here with him. So develop that rapport with James Daniels. Again, I had him on my board as a building block. 24 years old, guys. The guy came in the league as a 20-year-old rookie, and I think he's, like I said, last year at left guard. First time he played left guard, to my knowledge, in the NFL, and he was playing very well until he got hurt. I think this is a guy that's got to be, and I agree with you, Donald. I think this guy's a center. He came in as a center. I had him as a top-rated center in that draft. I think he went back to center. We see him now. He's making the calls. We see him get up. You look up, and he points to Mustafa to go ahead and for that cadence, that silent count, to go ahead and snap the football. So he's a guy that's taking charge of that interior of the offensive line. I think this is a guy you got to bring back and bring him back at center, and now you build around them. Now you got, like I talked about earlier, Tevin Jenkins, Larry Borum. You got white hair next to him. So I think this is a guy that you kind of put him in the middle and let him play his natural position, and just leave him there. Don't move him to left or right guard. Just leave him there.
Rock Davis has a concern. He says, what about paying these guys all that money they're going to be demanding, because both of them are going into their free agency year? Are you concerned, given that they have neither Roquan Smith or James Daniels, although James Daniels could potentially play his first full season without an injury, but so far neither he nor Roquan have done so. Are you concerned about paying them all that money, given the lack that they haven't played a full season?
Well, I mean, I think Roquan's going to make some big bank, but I don't know if James Daniels is going to break the bank, to be honest with you. I mean, he's like I said, he's had an issue staying healthy. But I think he's a guy that you gotta bring back, because I think he's a guy that you can build your offensive line around. So, or one of the key pieces on the offensive line. So I don't think Daniels is going to go ahead and break the bank at center, especially if you put him inside at center. And Roquan is going to cost you some money, but again, you have basically no money at linebacker right now, because Trevathan's going to be gone probably. Like Ogletree on a 1-year contract, so you're gonna have to bring in you have some young guys there, but you're gonna have to invest in that linebacker position, and there's no way you can and I think that's one of the reasons why they haven't kind of given A-Rob the money, because they know they got to pay Roquan.
Absolutely.
And some of the other guys coming up, and that's why they're like, we cannot afford to give A-Rob money when we kind of take that money and kind of put it over to Roquan Smith, and linebacker. So is it concerning that he hasn't played a full season? I mean, yes, you always, obviously the best ability is availability. But again, just the talent and the impact. And I think he's going to miss this week's game, and you guys are going to see the impact that he's there, that's lacking when he's not there, the impact he has on the game when he's actually playing and he's healthy. So just based off that, there's no way you could let this kid walk out the door.
Yeah, there was there were some reports that the whole A-Rob signing him to a contract extension, that was probably going to happen. But when the pandemic hit and Ryan Pace learned that his salary cap was going to take a huge hit, an unexpected hit, because every year the cap usually increases $10 million or more, and that wasn't going to happen, all of a sudden the negotiations with A-Rob and his team took a turn for the worse, and they need, as you said, keep money available for some guys like Roquan.
Isn't the cap jumping up back to somewhat normal numbers this year?
I think it will jump up, but it's not going to go up as much as it will in 2023 when the new TV contract, billions of dollars are put in. That is when you can really take advantage of cap dollars. but there could be a way to structure contracts where some of that payment is delayed. So you could go after some big time free agents this year and structure the contract.
Right, because you can always take from the guys making big money next year and kind of push it off to this future, especially if that cap's going to grow up in a couple of years. That way you can kind of get some players this year.
Exactly. All right. Now we want to talk about the three guys that you've identified as potential building blocks. These guys have intrigued you in some way. They are Eddie Goldman, Kendall Vildor, and Jakeem Grant.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, guys, you would have said Eddie Goldman's got to be a building block, right? Right. Only 27 years old. He's a stout force in the middle of that defense. The main reason why I put him here is and I got to say, I'm still a big Eddie Goldman fan. We've seen some of the inconsistencies this year with injuries and with him sitting out last year with COVID. And there's rumblings about he's not sure if he wanted to play football or not. So that kind of got me concerned. And the other thing is I kind of sat down and watched some Eddie Goldman tape, and I'm trying to project now. Again, with Travis Gibson, I talked about if they move to a 4-3 defense, and even if they have Robert Quinn and Khalil Mack, both have played traditional 4-3 defensive end in their NFL career. So I have no problem with those guys there. And I think Travis Gibson can make the easy conversion. I think Bilal Nichols can be a nice 3 technique. And Eddie Goldman, I think, he's been a nose guard. Can he be a 1 technique in the 4-3? And I think that's where some questions might come up. He's not going to give you really much of a pass rush like a Bilal Nichols, who has the agility, the quickness to be able to hit that gap, get up the field, and penetrate. Now, what Goldman could give you a nice stout defensive tackle in the middle of that defensive line. He could do, sometimes you see a nice bull rush where he kind of gets into the chest of the guard or the center and just kind of walks him back. So he will give you that. So I'm open. Again, 27 years old, as long as he wants to play, and there's no questions about his want to. I think Eddie Goldman will eventually be a building block moving on here, whether you keep a 3-4 or a 4-3 scheme going into the next season. Kendall Vildor, again, first year starting corner, has been picked on lately. What was benched for Artie Burns last week, which we can get into. It's a whole different discussion there. I'm a big Kendall Vildor fan. I scouted him down at the Senior Bowl. I had him coming to the Bears. I think he fit the scheme nicely. Has he struggled? Sure, but he's a first-year starting cornerback, and you lost at one point both of your premier pass rushers, and I think the pass rush wasn't getting there, and I think he was getting picked on. So I see him as his future, as his best position is inside as a slot cornerback. So that's where I'm kind of envisioning him in terms of if he stays on here, and I anticipate he's going to be here. I just don't know if he's a building block per se, but I think you move him inside as a slot corner. I think it gives you a nice ability to be able to cover those quicker, shiftier inside receivers. So I think that's where he's probably going to be. Bears are probably going to be in the market for a cornerback, whether it's free agent or the draft. You got to bring in a guy that's going to be able to start opposite of Jalen Johnson if it's not going to be Kendall Vildor. And the third guy I had on there was did you want to jump in there real quick?
I just wanted to say that I'm of the belief that because the NFL has transformed itself into a passing league, that you need depth at cornerback more than you need it at maybe any other position. You've got teams trotting out, some of the high-powered offenses trotting out 5 wide receiver sets, and those
you'll see it Sunday.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Great point. And we don't have 5 defensive backs who can go with those guys. You got JJ, and then you don't got nobody else. But please go ahead and talk to us about Grant.
Yeah, so the other guy I put on here is Jakeem Grant. Obviously, 29 years old, multi-year NFL veteran, and he brought in here, mid-season, and I think he's added some juice to the return game. We haven't seen this kind of juice, and I want to say I don't want to go hard back as Devin Hester, but Tariq Cohen gave us some juice first couple of seasons. Cordell Patterson, more of it as a kick returner. You're right, but I think Grant has given you some juice in terms of the return game. But I've also liked the packages they've given him on offense, and getting the ball in his hands, whether it's on a jet sweep or a reverse, or just throwing him a quick ball there and just kind of let him do his thing in the open field. I think he's got a role on this offense. And I put down in my notes, like, I would be intrigued to see a creative, innovative play caller, what he would do with a package that included Darnell Mooney, Jakeem Grant, Tariq Cohen, and add another receiver. If you bring in a Chris Olave from the draft, or you bring in a veteran like Michael Gallup or something like that, what would they do? Get the ball in their hands in the open field. That type of athletic ability, to speed, the home run hitting ability. He's not going to be a starter. He's not going to be an every down player, but he's a guy that can give you something on offense. And I think that's a guy that I think I would like to keep. And I think he's a free agent as well. And again, he's 29 years old. He's been primarily a special teams guy, but if you can bring him back, I think, and put him in some packages on offense, I think he gives you that element that we've been asking for here on offense.
Conspicuous by his absence on your list is Eddie Jackson. Why?
Eddie Jackson is a guy that really, to me, has kind of, I know for me, his play has taken a downward turn this year. And last year, I was defending him, and you and I got conversations back and forth in terms of, you said his tackling is horrible, and I said, that's not his forte. His forte is more, pass defense and making a big plays. But, those big plays aren't out there anymore. You don't see the interceptions. You don't see the pass defense. You don't see the pick sixes anymore. And that's what you paid him for. And I'm a huge Eddie Jackson fan. I love him to come out of Alabama. I was ecstatic when the Bears drafted him. I just don't see him, living up to that contract right now. Now, I know a lot of people have gone to bat for him. I know a guy I respect and you respect as well, Matt Bowen, has said that his coverage ability as a safety makes a difference when he's not in there. And I will, see to Matt Bowen and his ability to, he played in the league, and his, what he says is probably 100%. But I'm just saying, like, to see him as a building block, he's got a big contract. I'm not sure if they can get away from that contract or not, but I just don't think that he's a guy that you can rely on to be a playmaker in that defensive secondary. I think he's a guy that he's going to have to get better, right? He's going to have to come back to the Eddie Jackson that was here at 2018 that made the Pro Bowl and made those big plays and those big interceptions. That's what they paid him for. And that's not what he's given them. So that's the one thing is why I left him off that list, is because I just don't, I'm not sure if he's a guy that's going to be here beyond maybe even next year.
Yeah, great point. I can't argue with anything that you said there. And it is a shame. One of the things that bugs me about the way Ryan Pace and previous Chicago Bears general managers, it bugs me that they don't build for their philosophy. So what I mean by that is Vic Fangio and now Sean Desai and even Chuck Pagano in between. Those guys have a philosophy where the safeties are interchangeable. You want a safety who can play free safety and strong safety, because you don't want the quarterback to figure out who is the free safety and the strong safety. So you are demanding of Eddie Jackson to play near the line of scrimmage, and that means he's got to be able to tackle. Right. Well, then if you are going to run that philosophy, then you should have kept Adrian Amos, and you should not have spent the big bucks on Eddie Jackson. It happened with Greg Olsen. We draft this pass-catching tight end, and then we bring in an offensive coordinator who doesn't want a pass-catching tight end. He wants another tackle out in the field.
Right. Well, that's the thing is, and that's the downside here is like, back in 2018, if someone told you, we're going to sign Adrian Amos, who had, like, I think 1 or 2 interceptions, and we're going to let Eddie Jackson walk, you would have lost your mind, right? Because Eddie Jackson is the all-pro.
I would have wanted both of them, but yeah, you're right. Go ahead.
Right. If you had to pick one, right? If you had to pick one. Yes. And I've said this year, I'm like, I didn't think that we would, kind of regret that decision to let Amos walk and keep Eddie Jackson. But so far we've regretted it, because Amos has gone to Green Bay and he's been, pretty good to really good in pass coverage. He's improved there. He's always been solid in terms of, being a guy that comes up, plays around the line of scrimmage, and is a solid tackler in the open field. That's the thing. I just don't think, I'm not ready to give up on Eddie Jackson. I want to see it come back. Right. Again, I'm not in that school where I expect him to be, Dave Durst at the line of scrimmage and being this enforcer, but just, be the guy that's that ball hawking safety that we saw at Alabama, that we saw your first couple of years here in the league. Just be that guy again. That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah. And I always look at the psychology of the players, even though I'm not a psychologist and I never talk to them and so forth. But I do believe that potentially what could be happening with Eddie Jackson is that he comes into the National Football League from Alabama, a great program. Nobody boos Alabama down there. And he comes to the pros. He ends up on a really good defense, and that defense is doing great right away. So he's getting all the success, and now
he's got a cereal box. He's got his own cereal.
Yes, he's got his own cereal, which nobody is buying. Mariano's got on sale now for $1 a box. But so now he's facing some adversity. He's hearing boos and so forth. And I think it's screwing with his head a little bit. And I think that, there is kind of, when you sign that big contract, that you are always thinking to yourself, I got to prove myself. I got to prove that I'm worth it.
Right.
I want another big contract before it's all over with. And I think that's maybe where he is at with his headspace. But the other thing too is that he just has never been interested in tackling. Even as a pro, you heard it in that video. Anybody can tackle. It's getting turnovers. Well, you're not doing that either.
Well, that's the thing, exactly. So be that guy that we wanted, right? The guy that they paid. Be that guy that gets the ball, past the fence and interceptions and all that stuff. Yeah. So that's the one thing that he's gonna have to do. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the fans booing and all that stuff, yeah, as a player, you can't talk about that. I mean, the fans pay their money. They can boo if you're not playing well. That's their prerogative, their right. But you have to concentrate on what you're doing on the football field. And that's why when these players get sensitive in terms of what the fans are doing, and the fans shouldn't be booing us. And well, why not? If you stunk up the place, why can't they boo you? What are you? We can't boo you because you're Eddie Jackson. You make what, 20-some million a year? Yeah. That makes no sense. So if you're a player, even with look at Baker Mayfield, he's sniping back at the Browns fans who are booing him, and it's like, just concentrate on what you have to do on the football field. You already have a tough job as it is. Don't worry about the fans, the outside noise, and just worry about your play and improve your overall play. If you improve your overall play, they're not gonna boo you. Trust me.
Yep. Seems like there are some players in the National Football League who need to be taught a lesson on how to deal with criticism, because it's bound to hit you. Even the greats, even Tom Brady has been criticized. He's got 7 rings? He's been criticized the other times he didn't win a ring.
Terry Bradshaw was called dumb. Remember Terry Bradshaw? He won how many Super Bowls? 6 Super Bowls, was it?
6, yeah.
They called him dumb in this because he was throwing interception. They couldn't read defenses. 4 Super Bowls. Sorry. Yeah. And it's like, you struggle, but you got to get better. You can't keep doing this in terms of getting it back and forth with fans. I think social media plays a big part of it as well. I think these guys see their Twitter feeds and see what fans are posting on social media, and I think it just kind of boils over to, then they hear the fans booing at the stadium, and then all the reporters are asking about it. And I think that all kind of incorporates in there, and then they let their frustrations out. One thing you got to do with Twitter, if you're especially a football player, don't look at your timeline. Try not to engage in that. Do that in the off season. During the season, you're gonna, even if you're playing great, you're gonna have people, just trying to get at you and just trying to piss you off and troll you and all that stuff. So it's just get off of social media. Don't worry about the fans. Worry about your assignment and play football on Sundays.
That's right. Alex Sims, I'll get to your question in a second. I want to play one last soundbite I think I got here. And it is regarding going back to Kendall Vildor. Sean Desai answered a lot of questions regarding Vildor, and Desai was basically saying that, the kid is okay, he's engaged, he's learning, he's taking criticism well, and so forth. So I'm not going to play some of the sound bites I picked on him, but I will play this one because I thought this was a good question, a really good question from Mark Potash, asking Sean Desai, how do you evaluate him? How do you learn what is working with him or not? And I thought this was an interesting response.
That's part of our process and the relationships that we build with our players. When you're in a meeting room and you're with the person every day for a long time, you can see where the guy is improving mentally. And then on the field, you got to make sure it matches. And so he's been able to do that. He understands in terms of the defense what we want of him in that role, and everybody does. And he understands the techniques and the tools that we want. And then, is there going to be a growth process? Yeah. Is there an ever-growing process? Yeah. I don't think everybody's ever capped. And a prime example of that is Robert Quinn, who's continued to grow. And so, he's got leaders around him that kind of show him that. And Kendall's been very humble in terms of, he's always been this way in terms of trying to be a sponge and learning and trying to keep improving his own game, whether it's his techniques or his mental aptitude of the game.
So what is Kendall not doing now that you hope, whether it's the end of this year or next year, he will be doing?
Well, I don't know if I would calculate one thing that way. I don't think that's necessarily fair to do that. It's just we wanted him to improve in some areas, and he knows those. And we wanted a little bit of a change-up on our defense with a different style of play. because you got a different type of player that plays the same defense but a little different way, like we just talked about. And so that's part of it. And so, again, Kendall is not a non-starter anymore. He's still part of our plans, and we're going to continue to develop him that way.
One of the things that he was referring to there is that the reason they started Artie Burns over Kendall Vildor was because they were going to play more man-to-man defense, and they thought that Burns was better at that at this point of Vildor's career. So I think the headline here, though, is that they're not giving up on Kendall Vildor, and I think that it's really, really advantageous to the Bears and Bears fans that hopefully we can see an improvement over the last third of the season in Vildor's play, that he can bounce back and start playing closer to that level that he did earlier in the season. Because if not, again, you're going to need to put that on a really high priority list. And you're already going to invest in defensive backs, but how much you're going to invest is the question.
Right, that's the thing, and with Vildor, like we talked about earlier, like I'm still a big fan of the kid. I think, at one point, both pass rushers were out, both Quinn and Mack were out. There was the defense line was generating no pressure, and he was back there covering for 3 or 4 or 5 seconds, and then guys were he was getting picked on. He's not a bigger corner. You talked about here with Artie Burns, a bigger corner, more physical at the line of scrimmage. If you're going to play press man, you want a guy that's going to be stronger at the line of scrimmage to be able to press the receiver, kind of jam him, reroute him at the line of scrimmage. And Vildor is more of a quicker, shiftier guy. But he's a guy, like I said, I see him probably maybe stepping inside as a slot corner. We'll see how that happens here in the future. But a lot of times when you're getting overwhelmed and you're getting beaten and then just feel like the whole world's kind of caving in on you, it helps just to kind of sit down, take a step back, and just watch someone else play. And I think that might be something that they're doing with Vildor here, because just kind of step back, and 1 week he's not going to be in the highlights or be getting beaten, all that stuff, and kind of take a look and see how Burns played that position, see how Jalen Johnson is playing his position. Maybe get some tips off him, just kind of watching, and instead of the bolts are flying live, you're in the game and all that stuff. Just take a step back, relax, just kind of watch, and I think he's a kid that we should see back on the football field sooner rather than later.
So do you think that this injury to Justin Fields, where now he's going to perhaps sit a second straight game, do you think that this could be helping him even more than actually going out there and taking some snaps, or maybe not more, but still helping him tremendously?
Not more, because obviously nothing beats playing experience, right? That's how you get better. You're making your mistakes and just learning from your mistakes and getting better, and that's something that Justin Fields has done throughout his football career. But it does help to kind of watch Andy Dalton run this offense. We talked about Dalton missing some throws here, because now when they go and break that film down, they're going to say, Dalton, why did you miss that throw? And now he can say his reasons why, what happened, and then now we can talk about, in terms of Fields says, all right, well, from that situation again, Andy saw this and he went right here, but maybe I can hold a little bit longer. Maybe I can just peek at Darnell Mooney and see if he runs that route again, see if he gets that outside leverage and he breaks open to that corner. Just stuff like that, just the stuff he can pick up here, just mentally, some tips in here he can pick up by just watching the coaching staff break down the games of Andy Dalton, and then kind of learning from there as well. Similar kind of concept with Vildor. Kind of step back, the live bullets aren't flying around you now. Now you can kind of step back and just kind of process the game and see it through the eyes of Andy Dalton for the case of Justin Fields, and learn from those, and then eventually, hopefully, when he's healthy, get back in. If not this week, then possibly next week
against the Green Bay Packers.
That'd be nice for them to come back and then get a victory there.
Yep. On Sunday Night Football in front of a national audience. I would love that. It would make my life so much happier. All right, let's get to some questions here. Danny and I thought we can maybe go an hour, a little over an hour. No, it's going to be long.
We talk too much. We can't go over that.
Well, I'm having fun listening to you and interacting with you, so this is great. Let's start with Tony. I think Tony asked a great question. Is Jason Peters too old to bring back for at least one more year? What do you think?
Tony, you and I think alike, man, because I was thinking the same thing earlier this week, and I'm here's after albeit a rough start, he's really recovered nicely in terms, especially for a guy, a 39-year-old, left tackle. He's done a nice job in terms of protecting that blind side, that left tackle spot. Still is not the most agile guy getting up to the second level or maintaining those, sustaining those second level blocks. But again, he's a 39-year-old veteran who's played God knows how long. That's a great question, Tony. That's something I thought about. And if he stays healthy, knock on wood, and he's a damn good athlete for a guy that big. So if he keeps himself in shape and the Bears commit to bringing him back for one more year, I could see him coming in here and being what I call a veteran backup to the potential. I think they're going to go get a left tackle from the draft. I think just these starting left tackles right now in the NFL are going to make too much money. Like we talked about some of the cap issues right now. So I think they're going to go draft a young guy, and I think they're going to have him compete with Peters or whoever is there to kind of maintain that left tackle position. So bringing Peters in, say, all right, we're going to bring out a rookie, and you're going to compete. And if you're better than a rookie, you start. And I think that's the route I would go. If Peters doesn't want to come back, if he decides he retires or he doesn't want to come back for a non-guaranteed position, then I would go get another veteran left tackle, kind of similar. The guy's been around the league for a couple of years, and just bring in a young rookie with your second round pick, possibly or more likely, and bring him in and have him compete with the veteran, and the best player wins. That's what I would go.
Okay. Alex Sims wants to know, would you take Brandon Smith or Devin Lloyd in the second round?
Second round, that's a linebacker. Devin Lloyd is a nice physical linebacker, and we talked about earlier, if the Bears shift to a 4-3 defense with a new scheme, we don't know yet. That'd be a nice guy to put in the middle and swing Roquan out to the weak side if you want. I think Devin Lloyd also can cover some tight ends as well. Maybe be a strong side linebacker. So yeah, it gives you some versatility. But and middle linebacker is going to be a need. Linebacker is going to be a need in general, right? But we just talked about that left tackle position has got to be filled. Now, I'm not saying take a player with a lower grade than a Devin Lloyd in second round because he's a left tackle. You never win that way. You always end up losing that way. But I foresee that there's going to be possibly a decent, or if not a tackle, of impact receiver in that second round, where I think those two positions are a little bit more of a glaring need right now, because you can always kind of maybe bring back an Alec Ogletree for a year or two, or maybe bring in a veteran free agent, and on a 1-year contract, and you got Caleb Johnson, who was a rookie this year, who's been playing permanent special teams. He's a guy that in the preseason, I like what he displayed out there, some of the instincts, the ability to go get to the football. He's a guy that I liked his tape coming out of undrafted free agent, coming out of a small school. So he got some depth there. I think with Iggy, he's shown some improvement. Do you give him an opportunity to play? But Devin Lloyd is a damn good player. But for me right now, receiver and offensive tackle are top priorities.
Yep. You're going to have to, one of the things that's important for the Chicago Bears team is they've got to make this an attractive place for free agents. And how do you do that? You do that by having a quarterback people believe in. And that quarterback is Justin Fields. So they got to somehow figure out a way to position Justin Fields for success here in this last third of the season, because that could really help out the offseason. Sounds weird, but it's true.
No, it's 100% true, because no one wants to come here and play for a quarterback that has no chance.
Exactly. Alex Sims has a follow-up. He says, Danny, would you trade up is there anyone that you would trade up in the first round if he's available, somebody late in the first round, anyone that you've been kind of eyeing and saying, man, that would be cool if the Bears could get him, but he's probably a late first round pick?
Yeah, but I mean, you got to see how the board falls. It depends who's there. But if, for example, if your top tackle on your board is still there and he's dropping for whatever reason, again, we just talked about Ryan Pace has always been trading picks and trading draft capital to move up, and I think that's what he needs to do this year, is kind of maybe trade down and get some more picks, because he's going to have to replenish his team. We just talked about some of the lack of depth on his team. So I unless it's a can't miss player and he's on top of my board and for whatever reason he's falling. If it's not an injury or if it's not off the field concern, you always have to think about it. You always have to be prepared and ready to go get those playmakers, those special talents. But it's going to be hard with limited draft capital to go up there and make a trade like that.
Yeah. One of the things that I learned from doing Greg Gabriel Talks Football is he says that at some point in the draft room, the process is they start scratching out names of players, that they're not interested in because either they've got off the field problems or they got academic problems,
or they're not a scheme fit,
or they're not a scheme fit. Exactly. So, and then you start targeting players who could fit in. And so I'm sure what I would like to see from the Bears right now is saying, okay, we're knocking off these 10 guys because they're definitely going to be taken in the first round. We know these 10, 15, 20 guys are going to be taken in the first round. So we're not even going to bother looking into them because there's no way I'm going to trade more draft picks to move up. We need to, in fact, we should consider trading down from the top of the second round, trading down to pick up more draft assets because the needs are so profound.
Right. And that we talked about getting more at bats, right? Getting more at bats and having a better chance of getting those hits. So that's the thing is like I would like to see is just trying to trade down, get some more picks. Because the position you're going to look at, just kind of an early look at the draft right now. Receiver looks to be a nice solid group of receivers. Offensive tackle looks to be a nice solid group of offensive linemen. So you could probably get one in that top half of the second round too. So this is going to be the primary, obviously, because the Bears don't have a first round pick this year because of the Justin Fields trade. So this is going to, and these are the two positions that I'm looking at to kind of knock there. Now, if we get more into the draft process and we see that the depth at receiver is even more, that you can get guys in the third, fourth round, then now you can might knock off the receiver position in terms of being a guy. You get in a second round, you maybe target an offensive line, maybe target if it's a linebacker or whatever, you see the depth there. But for now, it's too early to kind of give you an overall grade on the entire group or the position group. So, but right now, just off the cuff of my head right now is like the receiver group is again, it's got some superstar potential. You got two guys at Ohio State. You got two guys at Alabama right now that are going to probably be first or early second round picks. So this is just it's just going to be a nice crop again to go ahead and build. Of course, that's going to be one of the primary needs for the Bears to go ahead and attack this offseason.
Yep. Bear Truth 9 wants to know, what if somebody says, hey, I'll give you a first round for Khalil Mack? Would you do it?
Well, first of all, if it's like a 30th pick in the first, I probably wouldn't, just because of the impact that Khalil Mack puts on the football field. I think it can be measured by just one first round pick. So I know he's not a stat stuffer. He's not a guy that is going to get, hasn't gotten those, 12, 15 sack seasons, but I just think, he's got 6 sacks and he's played 3 games on a broken foot, and he tallied sacks in those games too. So it's just the attention he draws, the ability to beat double teams, his ability to play the run defense as well as just his efforts, his contributions on defense. How many times have we broken out tape, Aldo, and we see, a offensive lineman, a tight end chipping him, and then also a running back coming out of the backfield chipping him as well. So 3 guys really just kind of, drawing attention of 3 guys on offense. So, that type of a playmaker, you don't usually have. So I think Mack still has a couple good years left in him. And I think that this is going to be a team, hopefully, with Mack and Quinn at the outside. It's going to be, again, hopefully built around that defensive line.
Right. Yeah, I think that there is a possibility that the Bears could move Khalil Mack because the needs on this team are so monumental.
But I think the salary cap is huge, though. Because remember, they traded.
Right. It's not easy on the Bears because they've deferred so much money. Right. So it would be a mess. So I would weigh that very carefully. I wouldn't necessarily trade him for a first. I would like to, if somebody made an offer, some team that says, man, if we could have Khalil Mack next season, that will just define our defense, just a specialized pass rusher that teams have to scheme for, blah, 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 all those positives about Khalil. Let's call Chicago and offer them a second and a third. I would say, excuse me, my language, but yes, because you got so many needs. Now, I know it's a crapshoot. Those 2 draft picks could end up being busts, but you gotta have faith in the scouting department. And at this point, you're not going to win a Super Bowl next season with Khalil Mack. You're not. You maybe can win a Super Bowl in 2023 with that second and third round draft pick that you got from Mack. What do you think about my philosophy?
That's a gamble. So I guess my question to you is, who's a better player right now, Von Miller or Khalil Mack?
Khalil.
Okay, so the Rams just traded a second, third round pick for Von Miller. So if Khalil's a better player, then the Bears should technically get more than a second and third round pick from. But I understand where you're going with that scenario there. But
acquiring more assets,
right? More assets. It's a gamble, right? It's a gamble. Sure. Robert Quinn is so far, his production hasn't dipped that much in terms of once Mack has been out of the lineup, he's still been able to get sacks. So do you rely on Robert Quinn and a young guy like Travis Gibson, who I've identified earlier as one of your building blocks at defensive end or outside linebacker, depending on what scheme you're playing? If you can never say never, right? You can, if a team comes and says, we're a Khalil Mack away from getting, and then again, the dead cap money is something you have to consider as well. If you can't get around it, you just can't get around it. But if it's something like, say, for example, that's not an issue, and you get, second, third, this year and a second next year, for example, an offer you just can't refuse, then you go ahead and do it, because I don't think anyone's untradeable. But I just, for a first round pick, I don't think I would do it.
Oh man, I think about what is ahead for Ryan Pace or the next general manager. It is one big uphill climb to build this team, and so you've got to pray.
I disagree. I don't think it's that bad. That big. It's going to be a climb, but not an uphill climb.
Because you're absolutely 100% convinced Justin Fields is going to be a superstar quarterback.
Well, honestly, superstar, but he's going to be a very damn good quarterback, yes.
Yeah, I just think that there's so many needs for this young man. I mean, like we talked about, there's only one wide receiver outside of Allen Robinson. There's only one wide receiver that's a building block for this team.
But if you bring in a quality receiver in the draft, a quality receiver in free agency, you can always build around that. You can always get guys on, to build that group. Yeah.
I got a theory that I'd like to get your comments on. And I know you're not a fan of relieving Ryan Pace, but I've been floating this theory around. So I want your thoughts on it.
Wait, is it the same source that told you that Matt Nagy was going to get fired after the?
No, it's not a source. It's just something that came up in my mind. You and I agree on this. Matt Nagy should be fired, right?
Yes, I think he's going to get fired. Yes.
Okay, so let's say he gets fired in that period just before the last 2 weeks of the season, which allows the Chicago Bears to start interviewing coaches. It would be good to get a head start on all the teams that are going to be looking for coaches. Well, what about this? What about if George McCaskey, in the next week or two, he announces that he has hired an executive vice president of football operations? Dan Pompei at The Athletic wrote an article about that. He had 4 candidates in mind. One of them, Ozzie Newsome of the Baltimore Ravens, who has moved into retirement, but might be lured back by big-time bucks and the promises that you get to hire your own GM and coach, and you're not the day-to-day guy. The GM is. We just want your observations. We want your leadership. We want your experience and so forth. So let's say somebody like Ozzie Smith, he also threw out some other names, Ozzie Newsome. So you bring in this executive vice president, and then you start with Ryan Pace interviewing coaches. You bring in an interim coach for those last 2 weeks. Then you, at the end of the season, Ozzie Newsome, or this executive vice president of football operations, brings Ryan Pace into the office and says,
"It's not you, it's me. It's not you, it's me."
Exactly. It's not you, it's me. And so that executive vice president then goes about the process of hiring a GM and a head coach. And he's already gotten a leg up, so he can tell the GM, I've interviewed these 5 guys, and I like this and don't like that. So you get a leg up. What do you think about that philosophy?
Well, the one thing is, first of all, if Ozzie Newsome is going to be the executive vice president of football operations, yes. I mean, that guy's a Hall of Fame executive and Hall of Fame player as well. So that guy has an eye for talent. I just don't know if he's going to cut his ties from the Baltimore/Cleveland franchise. But
unlikely.
I just don't think that scenario is possible for the Bears. I think first of all, if they're going to bring in someone to run the show, why would they let Ryan Pace interview, coaches in the last couple of weeks of the season and then let him go? So I think if you're going to cut bait, and if you're going to cut bait with Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace, you got to do it, 2 weeks before the season, and put in someone in as interim GM and put in an interim head coach. And then you start the process of because you need to do this quickly. You need to find your GM. Don't sit there and do a 3 or 4 week, search for a GM, and then it's going to do a 3 or 4 week search for a coach. I think that's one of the issues. What happened with the Colts? Actually, it worked out for them. They took their time to find, Chris Ballard, and Chris Ballard went ahead and had a wink deal with Josh McDaniels, who then the last minute backed out, and they ended up kind of turning around and going and getting Frank Reich. Now it's worked out, but it took, in terms of getting their assistant coaches filled, and because the other staff's already filled. So my point is just, if you're going to do this, have conviction with it now. And I think, and I don't know how you feel about this. I don't think we've talked about this, but I think the conviction was there. I think that report that came out that the Bears were going to fire Matt Nagy after the Detroit game, I think that was done. I think that was going to happen. But I think the report came out, made them look bad now, because how are you going to fire a coach without even letting them know you're going to fire a coach? And then all of a sudden now they backtrack and say, no, we're not going to fire him. And I think, but because I think they're doing it, in my opinion, they're doing it to save Matt Nagy. Because what's going to happen Sunday when the Bears are down, say
40
points?
to nothing.
Yeah. You don't think that stadium's going to be rocking with fire Matt Nagy chance?
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be embarrassing for him.
I totally agree. I mean, at this point, they should have fired him just for the sake of him and his family. What the humiliation he's going through is something that's very damaging.
I mean, the guy's at a football game for his son.
Yeah.
And they're yelling. That to me is uncalled for, because the guy's just being a dad. I mean, you cannot like him as a football coach, and I don't think he's a good football coach, but he's a father first and foremost, and he's there supporting his son. And there's no way people should have been chanting fire Matt Nagy at a high school football game. Now it's at the Hawks games, at the Bulls games, at college basketball games. It's become ridiculous. And I think for the Bears as an organization, it's embarrassing to them that they're everywhere you go around the Chicagoland area, fans are chanting to fire their head coach. So I think that's why they were going to do it, to save him and themselves, the franchise, the embarrassment. But now they got out, however it got out, and I think now they have to, kind of draw it back, because that would look bad for potential future coaches if you're going to bring them into this organization, saying, "Wait, you just kind of did this guy wrong here, but by doing this to him." But anyway, so I think what they're going to do, I think they're going to eventually fire Matt Nagy. I just don't know what they're going to do with Ryan Pace. I think if they do keep Ryan Pace, you really got to have someone kind of look over him and make sure he makes that right hire. Now, that someone is not going to be Ted Phillips. It's not going to be George McCaskey. So this is where hiring a football VP would be a great thing for them to do. Someone that can come in, take over football operations, give Ryan Pace another year, right? And then kind of look over Ryan Pace's shoulder as he's going through the coaching process and hire somebody. So one thing I do know is the Bears want a face of the franchise. They want someone on the field to be the face of the franchise, which they hope is Justin Fields, and they want someone off the field. And I think they hope it's their coach. I think I have a feeling of who they're going to target. I just don't know, if this is even possible. But I think a guy like a Pat Fitzgerald could be something that the Bears could go after.
Get out of here.
I'm telling you, he's going to be a popular hire. He'll be a popular hire with the Chicago fans.
No, he won't. No, he won't. I saw a poll. This was last season, and Fitzgerald was derided as a possible NFL head coach, and for the Bears. I like Tony's suggestion here. People should be chanting "Blow it up."
That'd be like a less embarrassing than Matt Nagy. But curious, who would be your home run hire at head coach, if you have one?
I don't. I like to think about the process first. So I think that the process should be, need to interview 10 guys, 10, 15 guys. You need to cast a wide net. I would even interview college football coaches. I'd interview the guy from Stanford. I like him a lot. What's his name again?
David Shaw.
David Shaw. I would interview him. I would interview Ryan Day, Ohio State. And money wouldn't be an issue. So if Ryan Day says, you know what, Ohio State just called and they're going to offer me $10 million a year. Can you match that? And they're offering me 10 years for $10 million, $100 million. Can you match that? I would say yes, because it's so important. But I want to cast a wide net of college football coaches, veteran coaches, and young upstart. And you start with asking them, what is your vision? Tell me what you think you can accomplish here in Chicago. Now, tell me how you're going to do it. Who can you bring in as coaches? How will you build this offense that you were talking about? Blah, blah, blah. And capture all that information, and then you make that informed choice. I don't want to be here saying Brian Daboll would be the guy, this guy would be the guy, this guy would be the guy. I don't fucking, excuse my language. I don't know those guys.
Those guys haven't been head coaches. They have not been in front of a room.
Right. So what I would want is to figure out a way to get the best information from these guys so that I can make a better informed decision, which is what McCaskey and Ted Phillips have not done. That they relied on Ernie Arcosi, and Ernie came up with Ryan Pace and John Fox. That's proven to be wrong. And then when you gave Ryan Pace the ability to bring his coach, he got it even more wrong, right, with Matt Nagy.
So that's the thing. That's the thing with all these first-year head coaches, offensive coordinators are going to be first-year head coaches potentially. It's like you don't know how are they going to be as head coaches. And that's a big leap of faith you're taking there. So, and that's why you need someone who's going to be able to come in and give you a plan and say, all right, who are your assistant coaches? Who are you going to bring in as defensive coordinator? What's your plan? Like I said, what's your plan with Justin Fields? If it's a defensive guy, who's your offensive coordinator, and who's going to be his quarterback's coach? Because if the offensive coordinator, if you're successful, he's going to be gone in a year or two. And are we going to switch an offense? Or are you going to have a guy that's going to replace him? That all got to be laid out. That plan's got to be there by this potential head coach candidate. And for me, the reason I think they like Pat Fitzgerald, I think, because he's a local guy, Bears fan, a guy who's been a head coach, who's done more with less in the Big Ten than, say, a Ryan Day, for example. Ryan Day wins with these 5-star athletes, while Pat Fitzgerald coaches these guys up. So, but again, you're talking about a guy that's never done in the NFL, a guy that's going to have to come in with a plan. Wait, who are your contacts? Who are you going to bring in as a defensive coordinator? Don't go get him a guy from Northwestern. You tell me who you're going to bring in here as your offensive and defensive coordinators, and then let's talk. And that's the main thing. And again, everything's got to be centered around Justin Fields. Everything, whether it's a defensive coach you bring in or if it's an offensive coach you bring in, who is your offensive coordinator? Who's going to be calling plays, and what is your plan for Justin Fields? How are you going to make this kid successful? And I think that's going to be the key thing, the key question these guys have to answer.
And Danny, I hate to keep you because I know you got to go to work in the morning. I got a 10 a.m. massage, by the way, but that's a different story. So I was going to ask. Now I forgot my question. I was going to ask about when you're building this team. You've got you said about building around Justin Fields. So, are you then prepared to do what Phil Emery and Mark Trestman did, which is they provided all these resources into the offense, and despite knowing they had an aging defense, they didn't provide resources to the defense, and that defense was giving up 50 burgers to the Patriots and Packers in back-to-back weeks. I mean, there is that balance there, right? I mean, you want to get Justin Fields all the weapons he can get, but you can't disregard the fact that this defense right now, I mean, you only had 4 guys in your building blocks for defense. So that's why I think that's a deep climb.
But the one thing is you have Justin Fields, your leader on offense, on a rookie contract. So now you can go ahead and fill around. Now, we talked about some of the cap availability. You got to build up front, build your offensive line, build your defensive line, and now you're filling around them, fill the receivers. So right now, going into the draft, I was going through this just off the top of my head, this exercise. The only position that I would say the Bears do not need to use a draft pick on is quarterback and running back. Everything else is open. You want to get a linebacker, you want to get a defensive lineman, you want to get another edge rusher, you want to get a cornerback, you want to get a safety, you want to get receivers, you want to get another backup, another tight end. You can justify using draft pick on. The only thing I wouldn't use draft picks on would be a quarterback and a running back. You always pick up a running back as an undrafted free agent. You could bring in a veteran on a 1-year deal to be like a third guy. We have Tariq Cohen coming off. So I'm saying those are 2 positions I would, but everything else is on the table. Everything else on the table, and now you build your offensive line, you build your defensive line, and then you fill in around, and you fill in the position players around Justin Fields, and you come up with a game plan in terms of how you're going to be successful. Look what the Patriots are doing. Patriots did a great job of bringing in Mac Jones, right? They started off slow. They only gave Mac Jones a certain portion of the offense. He threw 10, 15-yard routes, slant routes, and they started off 2 and 4. But they have a good offensive line. They have a solid running attack. They have a very good defense. And now, once they started winning, they started opening up the volume of that offense a little bit more and more and more. And now Mac Jones is being able to get the ball down the field a little bit more and showing some of that accuracy and that deep ball touch that we saw at Alabama. And now they're winning. So that's how you should have built this team or planned this team coming into the season, with Justin Fields at the helm, with a strong defense and a strong running game. But that wasn't what this coach staff wanted to do.
That's a great point about Mac Jones and how Bill Belichick has brought him along. Question for you. Do you think that if the Patriots would have drafted Justin Fields,
same thing,
and if they would have given him the same development plan they gave Mac Jones, do you think the results would be similar to Mac Jones?
Yep.
I agree.
If not more better, if more spectacular. Remember, coming into this draft, these 5 quarterbacks, I had first round grades on all of them. I thought all of them were going to be good. But remember, I told you, I said 2 guys that I said I know are not going to be busts are Mac Jones and Justin Fields. Yep. Those are 2 guys I know for sure that their floor is it might be good to a good starting quarterback. It might be all pro, but they're not going to be bust. Those guys, their competitive drive, their ability to be able to make plays on a football field. Mac Jones more with his mind and his arm, and Fields with his athletic ability and his accuracy downfield. I said these 2 guys are not going to be bust. Bears get one of these 2 guys, they're going to be set at the position.
Todd Bowles, you like him?
I like Todd Bowles as a defensive coordinator. I just don't know. Again, you bring him in, Todd Bowles is going to be a second go around. I think he could be a leader of men. I think a team players will follow him. But Todd Bowles, who is your offensive coordinator, right? Who and what's your succession plan if your offensive coordinator leaves after a year or 2?
Right.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah. I think of Lovie Smith when the name Todd Bowles comes up, and it has nothing to do with skin color. It just has to do with the guy is a fantastic defensive coordinator, but can he coach an offense? Can he build an offense? And that was Lovey's biggest problem with the Chicago Bears. And Todd Bowles, when he was with the Jets, he wasn't able to build. Now, a lot of that is probably not his fault, right. But that is my question. Can he build an offense? And I think that's what you just said too, is who's your offensive coordinator?
Right. That's the key thing. And even if you're bringing this guy, I think his name is Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator from the Giants, hell of a coach, has been around for a long time, been on Bill Belichick and all that stuff. And again, Giants are playing damn good defense with an undermanned unit, but who is your offensive coordinator? What is your succession plan if he ends up leaving? Right. That's why I need to know that, because I do not want to interrupt the development of Justin Fields. If he gets into this offense and he starts developing, getting better, and starts knowing the offense, in 2 years now, you're a hot team and your offensive coordinator is gone. Mm-hmm. And now you got to start all over again with a new system, with a new offensive coordinator. That's what I don't know. I want a succession plan already in place.
Yep. There you go. Danny, a great 2 hours of football talk. We went into overtime and kind of suspected that we would. And I can't wait to talk next week. Is there any chance at all that any scenario you see the Bears upsetting the Cardinals?
Well, without Khalil Mack, without Akeem Hicks, without Roquan Smith, it's going to be an uphill battle, to be honest with you. Not that I don't think the Cardinals are unbeatable. I'm still kind of wavering on in terms of, are they for real or not for real? But their defense is pretty damn good. Probably gonna not see Justin Fields this week. If there's any chance he still has some fractures in his ribs, I would not play the kid. Exactly. Let Dalton go out there. And my only thing is I think it's going to be a bad loss for the Bears. And I feel bad. Honestly, I feel bad for Matt Nagy, because I think that stadium by that second half is going to be yelling fire Matt Nagy. And I think it's just going to be embarrassing. I think that, that might be the last straw that kind of maybe makes McCaskey say, we got to go and cut the cord.
Yeah. I mean, and it would be totally the fault of the Chicago Bears management team that they would put Matt Nagy through that. They've got to know, would have had to look down at that schedule and say, okay, man, the Cardinals and the Packers, and to start that last third of the season, should we just make this move now? They should have made the move before. It would have softened the fact that the Bears were going to lose probably the majority, if not all, of the remaining games, because you would have signaled, yeah, we're starting over. We're blowing the whole thing up. Stick with us. We'll get it right the next time. But instead, they're going to throw that guy out, just like they threw out Chris Tabor to do the press conference after the rumors came out about Matt Nagy being fired. That was cruel.
It's cruel. And I honestly feel bad for Matt Nagy. Like I said, him and I don't agree on terms of coaching and some of the stuff he does, but it's just he seems like a good individual. He's a father, he's a son. It's like you don't want someone like that to go through it. And I wouldn't be surprised if it starts as soon as he hits the field, before the game even starts. Yeah, the fans might just go off on him. It's just something that, I guess the only thing is the Green Bay game is on the road. So unless some Bears fans go up there and start chanting it in Green Bay, that'd be even more embarrassing for the organization. But
the Packers fans will probably start a chant, re-sign Nagy, just to rub it in. That's been the worst part of this season for me, is just the humiliation that us fans have had to endure. And it's time that this organization understand our pain. I know that they go through pain. I know McCaskey wants to win for Virginia and so forth. I know that, but they don't sit through the pain that we have through the crap talking, the embarrassment, carrying it all week long. It's different. I mean, we're talking about millions of fans, not just
for me. It was my low point as a fan, as an analyst of the Bears was Mark Trestman. I mean, that was just embarrassing. Like you just knew the Bears had no chance at even winning. At least now you know they have a chance. But unfortunately injuries have really kind of hindered that opportunity here as well. So we'll see how it goes off. But I just at this point I feel more sorry for Matt Nagy now.
Yeah. All right. Well, don't feel too sorry for him. But I hear you.
I mean, he's going to be gone next year, and he's going to be collecting his salary still.
Exactly. What about? Do you think he would make a good college coach? Because a lot of people have been saying that his rah attitude it would be better because college coaches are less scheme dependent. It's more about motivating young men
and recruiting, maybe at a lower level, college. But I don't think he'll have an issue getting a job in the NFL. Might
really?
Be not a head coach. I'm like an assistant on a staff. I don't think he'll have an issue getting a position on an NFL.
So if you're Matt Nagy and you get offered the quarterback coaching job for the Pittsburgh Steelers, we'll probably have Mitch Trubisky next season. But you get a quarterback coaching job. Would you take that over a head coaching job at, say, Fordham University?
Because if you want to continue your NFL, coaching career, yeah, you would. Now, next year, probably not, because he's going to be, like I said, just go home, kind of relax, decompress, get that 1 year salary. He's going to be coming from the Bears. But then after that, he's got a lot of friends in the coaching community. He's very good, friendly guy. You see him at some of these NFL, whether it's the combine or the Senior Bowl. You see, he's a guy that's out there. He has a lot of friends. He's got a lot of connections. So I think what's going to happen is, he'll eventually be brought onto a staff as a, quarterback coach or some offensive assistant, something like that. He's going to be, if he wants to continue his career, coaching in the NFL.
Tony has got the chant going, blow it up.
Yeah.
Blow it up.
That'll be at least less embarrassing, I think.
Absolutely. Thanks to everyone in the chat room. You made the show even more enjoyable for us. The ability to engage with you has been fun. This is it for our coverage this week. Tomorrow, we will have no new live programming, but we do start again on Sunday with the Barfly Tailgate Show. That's at 8 a.m. Central. And then, of course, we'll have our halftime report, Bear Football, and our after game show. And then we start it all again. Greg Gabriel and so forth, all of our great programming here at the Barroom Network. So for Danny Shimon, who is just outstanding, I'm so fortunate he's a part of the team. Really love it, brother. And by the way, we'll be announcing plans for Senior Bowl in a week or two. So stay tuned for that.
Draft on Tap is around the corner, guys.
Yes. And so a lot of cool things are going to continue to happen even after the Bear season, because as you know, NFL football is 52 weeks a year. That's our show for tonight. For Danny Shimon, I'm Aldo Gandia. Take care, everybody.
All right.